Chapter 1999. How shameless! Needless to say, everyone here was shocked. This is an inaction realm expert? How could he be so shameless? Wan Daoming gazed at Yixian and was speechless. How did this fellow attain the inaction realm? Why doesn't he have the demeanor of an inaction realm expert at all? At this moment, Yixian left with the others. Wan Daoming suddenly said, "Elder Yi." Yixian stopped moving and turned around to look at Wan Daoming. Wan Daoming smiled. "How about we spar?" The spar. The expressions of the experts from the 10,000 Dao sect and Dao Ling Palace changed drastically. After all, while there had always been friction between the three great powers, it hadn't risen to the point where inaction realm experts would fight. Yet now, Wan Daoming had challenged Yixian. This meant that they might fight to the death. Everyone looked at Yixian. Would Yixian accept it? Under everyone's gaze, Yixian smiled and said, "Then let's have a spar." Actually, he wanted to witness the combat strength of an inaction realm expert after he attained the inaction realm. Wan Daoming nodded slightly, opened his palm, and then swept it lightly. In an instant, the space before him and Yixian started to change, and it didn't take long for both Yixian and Wan Daoming to enter a mysterious expanse of space. Both of them were at the inaction realm, so if they fought in another world, it would collapse. Wan Daoming gazed at Yixian. "I haven't seen an inaction realm swordsman." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his right hand. In the next moment, his right hand started burning, and it instantly transformed into a flaming arm. In the distance, Yixian opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared in his grasp. A moment later, the sword suddenly vanished. A ray of sword energy instantly slashed down towards Wan Daoming. Wan Daoming raised his arm to block it. Bang! A ray of sword energy and flames erupted at the same time. A moment later, a fist smashed down towards the center of Yixian's forehead, and its powerful force shattered the space around Yixian. At this moment, Yixian's body became illusory. Boom! This punch missed, and Yixian himself had already retreated thousands of feet away. Wan Daoming raised his head to look at Yixian. Just as he raised his head, a sword light suddenly slashed down. Wan Daoming narrowed his eyes and raised his hand to block. Bang! Wan Daoming was pushed back thousands of feet by the sword, but before he could stop, another sword light slashed down. A strand of a cold light flashed in Wan Daoming's eyes. His right hand suddenly grabbed forward, and this grab directly grabbed onto Yixian's green profound sword. But in the next moment, his expression instantly changed, and he hurriedly let go. But it was still a bit too late, and half of his palm was directly sliced off. Meanwhile, the azure sword had returned to Yixian's hand. Wan Daoming looked at the green profound sword in Yixian's hand. "Good sword." Yixian smiled and said, "Your flame is also not bad." Earlier, the green profound sword had slashed the flame numerous times in succession, but the flame had only dimmed slightly, and its intelligence hadn't been destroyed by the green profound sword. Wan Daoming glanced at Yixian. "Take another punch of mine." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly took a step forward. In the next moment, he smashed his fist towards Yixian from afar. Bang! As he punched out, the flames on his arms suddenly transformed into a fist mark that shot out. Wherever the flaming fist mark passed, space-time collapsed inch by inch. In the distance, Yixian's expression was calm. He issued a command in his heart, and the green profound sword transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. Meanwhile, the flaming fist smashed down. Bang! Under the gazes of everyone, the sword shield forcefully blocked the flaming fist. However, the space around Yixian and the sword shield started to gradually vanish and be obliterated at this moment. Right? Wan Daoming took a deep glance at the sword shield in front of Yixian. He'd never imagined that this sword could actually take form. Most importantly, this sword shield was actually so strong. Abnormal. Wan Daoming opened his palm, and the flame returned to his hand once more. However, at this moment, the flame had dimmed a little. Yixian's sword was able to injure the spirit of his flame. In the distance, Yixian suddenly laughed. "Come, take this." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. In the next moment he appeared directly above Wan Daoming's head, and then he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Drawing the sword to determine life and death. Drawing the sword with all his strength to determine life and death. At this moment, even he himself didn't know how many times he'd overlapped. At the instant that Yi Xian drew his sword, the space where he and Wan Daoming were directly turned pitch black. In the next moment, that space boiled, and strands of powerful energy continuously spread in all directions. The expressions of Li Jing and the others changed greatly, and they all retreated explosively. And Lian Yun stared fixedly at the pitch-black space, and no one knew what she was thinking. After a long time, Yi Xian and Wan Daoming appeared before everyone. At this moment, one of Wan Daoming's arms was gone. Not only that, but his entire body was covered in sword wounds. The flame in his hand was only a small flame left, and it was on the verge of death. However, Yi Xian was completely fine. Had Wan Daoming lost? Everyone looked at Wan Daoming. Wan Daoming said softly, "This sword of yours is amazing." The implication was that he wasn't willing to accept his defeat. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Sect Master Wan, let's end today's spar here." In truth, he only had the upper hand earlier. If he wanted to kill Wan Daoming, he would have to fuse with the green profound sword and reach the state of one with the sword. Only then would he have a chance to kill Wan Daoming. That was his trump card, and he wouldn't expose it if he could. Wan Daoming looked at Yi Xian. The Dao Spirit Palace is filled with talents. With that, he disappeared with the powerful cultivators of the 10,000 Dao sect. Yi Xian looked at Lian Yun in the distance. "Miss Lian Yun, we'll meet again." And Lian Yun nodded slightly. "I'll visit another day." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Anytime." With that, he disappeared with the powerful cultivators of the Dao Spirit Palace. After Yi Xian and the others had left, Uncle Lin, who was standing next to Lian Yun, said softly, "I didn't expect another super strong person to appear in the Daoling Palace. And he's a sword cultivator. A swordsman." There was only one swordsman in the boundless realm, and that was Yi Xian. In truth, Lian Yun was the most likely to become the first boundless swordsman because the entire Fang Xiuan sect was doing its best to nurture her. To nurture an boundless realm cultivator required the entire sect's strength. In truth, they were all curious about why an boundless swordsman had suddenly appeared in the Dao Spirit Palace. At this moment, Lian Yun suddenly said, "Let's go." With that, she turned around and left. Soon, the powerful cultivators of the Fang Xiuan sect also left. After Yi Xian returned to the Dao Spirit Palace, the attitude of the people of the Dao Spirit sect towards him instantly changed. Boundless realm. That was in existence on the same level as Palace Master Ah Ling. After Yi Xian returned to the Dao Spirit Palace, he went straight to his small hall and entered Xiaota. At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes shone with excitement. He had gained a lot from the battle with Wan Daoming just now. He now had a clear understanding of his own combat power. Not only that, but he also understood the combat power of an boundless realm cultivator. In the following time, Yi Xian began to cultivate. The battle with Wan Daoming gave him a lot of enlightenment. At the same time, he also realized that he had many shortcomings. These shortcomings had to be changed. Yi Xian did not know that because of his battle with Wan Daoming, the entire alternate world was in turmoil. A new boundless realm cultivator. And a swordsman. Somewhere in the clouds. An old man suddenly appeared in the clouds. As soon as the old man appeared, a woman in a red dress came not far in front of him. The woman in the red dress looked at the old man. "Emoku, did you investigate that person's background?" Emoku shook his head. "I only know that he came from below." The woman in the red dress frowned. Emoku glanced at the woman in the red dress. "Hong Lian, are you worried that he has something to do with the mysterious woman who attacked back then?" The woman called Hong Lian nodded. "That's possible." Emoku frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Hong Lian said, "He is a swordsman, and the senior who attacked back then was also a swordsman. Most importantly, he had come from the bottom. Why was Chi Di killed back then? It was because one of his avatars went to the lower realm. If I'm not wrong, his avatars offended that big shot in the lower realm, so he was killed by that big shot." Emoku said, "You mean that Yi Xian is that senior's man?" Hong Lian nodded, "Yes." Emoku remained silent and didn't speak again. Hong Lian continued, "The reason this person was able to defeat Wan Daoming was because of the sword in his hand. The sword in his hand can break Wan Daoming's spirit fire." Emoku's eyes narrowed. "It can break it?" Hong Lian nodded. "Rather than saying that Wan Daoming lost to him, it would be better to say that he lost to the sword in his hand. That is a super divine artifact." Emoku softly said, "So you're saying that this guy is not only an endless swordsman, but also a super second generation?" Hong Lian nodded. Emoku silently pondered for a moment and softly said, "I understand." Hong Lian continued, "That day, Dao Ling already knew who killed Qi Di. With that, she shook her head. That woman is actually related to Yi Xian. Her fate might change because of this." Emoku suddenly said, "Do you think the 10,000 Dao sect will give up?" Hong Lian smiled. After suffering such a big loss, how could they give up? With that, she looked at Emoku. "You mean that when the 10,000 Dao sect targets him, we will lend a hand and befriend him?" Emoku smiled but didn't speak. Hong Lian gave him a thumbs up. "What an old fox." Emoku softly said, "It depends on whether or not the 10,000 Dao sect will cooperate." Hong Lian smiled. "They will cooperate? Because as far as I know, Muge and Fan Tian have already headed to the 10,000 Dao sect." Emoku frowned. "Fan Tian also went?" Hong Lian nodded. Emoku silently pondered for a moment before saying, "Let's take a gamble. Anyway, we have lived enough. Take a gamble." Yi Xian was still cultivating in the small tower. At that moment, Yi Xian seemed to have sensed something. The next moment, he disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Xu Wang. At that moment, Xu Wang slowly got to her feet. The moment she got to her feet, the space and time around them started boiling. Endless realm. Xu Wang looked at Yi Xian. "I have reached endless realm." Yi Xian's mouth curved up. "Good news." Chapter 2000. Inanimate Realm. Yi Xian didn't expect Xu Wang to reach inanimate realms so quickly. This was a pleasant surprise for him. At this moment, Xu Wang suddenly asked, "What is above inanimate realm?" Yi Xian thought about it and said, "Breaking the circle." Xu Wang was slightly stunned and puzzled. Yi Xian smiled. "It's very complicated. To put it simply, our inanimate realm is still within the circle. What we need to do is break the circle and create our own realm." Xu Wang pondered for a moment and nodded. "I understand." Yi Xian looked at Xu Wang. "What do you plan to do now?" Xu Wang looked at Yi Xian and was stunned. "What plan?" Yi Xian smiled. "You have reached inanimate realm. If you don't want to follow me and want to go on your own, that's fine. I won't stop you." Xu Wang shook his head. "I'll follow you." Yi Xian smiled. "Why?" Xu Wang looked at Yi Xian. "Because you are good to me." Yi Xian smiled. "You are my disciple. If I don't treat you well, who will?" Xu Wang looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled. "The space-time inside Xiaota is different from the outside world. You can cultivate here. Also, remember, you are free. If one day you want to leave, I won't stop you." With that, he turned and left Xiaota. Xu Wang remained silent. As soon as Yi Xian left Xiaota, Li Jing came to his small hall. Li Jing bowed to Yi Xian. "Elder Yi." Yi Xian smiled. "What's the matter?" Li Jing nodded. "Something is wrong with the 10,000 Dao sect recently." Yi Xian frowned. "Wrong?" Li Jing said in a low voice. "They called back their disciples who were outside. For safety reasons, I took the liberty to call back my Dao Ling Palace disciples who were outside. Now, the smell of gunpowder is very strong between us." Yi Xian said, "Because of me?" Li Jing smiled bitterly. "That's just one of the reasons. The main reason is that last year we also got a big advantage, but this year, they didn't even receive a single person." Yi Xian smiled and asked, "Have they made a move yet?" Li Jing shook his head. "Not really." Yi Xian nodded. "Then let's not make a move. However, we can't be careless. Let all the disciples in the palace pay attention and don't go out if they can, in case the other party attacks us. Li Jing suddenly asked, "What if the other party attacks?" Yi Xian blinked. "Of course we're going to F***ck him up." Li Jing nodded. "Understood." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I will go to the Fangxian sect. If there is anything, just send me a message." As his voice fell, he directly flew up on his sword and disappeared at the end of the horizon in the blink of an eye. Li Jing looked up at the sword light at the end of the horizon and said softly, "Do young people like to pick up girls?" The Fangxian sect. The Fangxian sect was located in the Fangxian mountain range in the north of the alternate world. This place was also a place that countless cultivators dreamed of joining. It was good to have a big tree to enjoy the shade. In this alternate world, if a cultivator didn't want to die for no reason one day, he had to find a big tree to rely on. Hence, he needed to find a tree to rely on, and the 3 superpowers were precisely that tree. As long as you joined one of the 3 superpowers, people would give you some face when you walked outside. Even if you had a conflict with someone, they wouldn't dare to kill you because you had a superpower behind you. Every day, people came to the Fangxian mountain range, wanting to join the Fangxian sect. Different from the previous recruitment, these people who wanted to join the Fangxian mountain range were all natives of the alternate world. And these people were much worse than those from the lower realm. The people from the lower realm were basically the top geniuses and monsters of their respective worlds. Moreover, they had all reached the Daoist realm. With a little training, they could reach the half-step annulled realm. But the natives of the alternate world needed to start from scratch. Training them at the beginning required a lot of energy and resources. Therefore, unless they were top geniuses or monsters, the 3 superpowers generally wouldn't accept them. As usual, there were many people gathered at the foot of the Fangxian mountain range today. There were more than 10,000 people. Yi Xian didn't directly enter the Fangxian sect on his sword. That was too disrespectful. He was here to make friends, not to cause trouble. Of course, he wouldn't participate in the test either. He couldn't show off in such a low-level way. It was beneath his dignity. Yi Xian walked up to an old man from the Fangxian sect. The old man glanced at Yi Xian and said expressionlessly, "Go to the side and participate in the test." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm Yi Xian, a friend of Miss Lianyun. Please inform her." The old man looked up at Yi Xian and said, "What did you say?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm a friend of Lianyun. Please inform her." The old man looked at Yi Xian and smiled, "You're a friend of the young sect master?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man suddenly flared up with rage. "Why don't you say you're an inaction realm expert?" Yi Xian said seriously, "I really am." The old man was stunned, and then he said angrily, "Do you think this old man is an idiot?" Yi Xian was speechless. "Damn it! Why does no one believe me every time I tell the truth? What's wrong with this world?" The old man glanced coldly at Yi Xian and said, "Stop playing with all these fancy tricks. A young man should be down to earth and take every step properly. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Little do you know that if you take too big a step, you'll easily pull your balls. Understand?" Yi Xian was speechless. The old man opened his palm, and a wooden tablet appeared in front of Yi Xian. "Go line up and wait for the trial." Yi Xian blinked and said, "Let me show you a trick." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a ray of light suddenly vanished into the sky. The old man frowned slightly. "What trick are you playing?" Meanwhile, a ray of light flashed in the distant sky, and then a woman and an old man appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. It was Lianyun and Uncle Lin. Everyone seethed with excitement when they saw Lianyun. She was the goddess of the square sect. Not only was she beautiful, she was kind as well, and she was the goddess in the hearts of countless men. And Lianyun hurriedly walked over to Yi Xian when she saw him, and then she said softly, "Why didn't you go up directly?" Yi Xian smiled. "I was afraid that it would be rude." Uncle Lin grinned when he heard Yi Xian. This young man is polite, and he's a good young man. Now, he found Yi Xian to be more and more pleasing to the eye. And Lianyun grinned as she stood before Yi Xian. How could it be rude? As she spoke, she glanced at the surroundings and said, "Let's go somewhere else?" Yi Xian nodded, and then the two of them left. Uncle In was very sensible and didn't follow them. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly asked, Eldarin, who was that young man just now? Eldarin grinned. He's Yi Xian from Dao Spirit Palace, the youngest in-action swordsman in this alternate world. The old man froze on the spot when he heard this, and it didn't take long for his body to start trembling. Uncle In glanced at the old man. What's wrong? The old man's face was ghastly pale. Eldarin, take good care of my family. Uncle In was speechless. Yi Xian followed and Lian Yun to the back mountain of the square-inch sect. It was the season of cherry blossoms. The two of them strolled among the cherry blossoms. It was as beautiful as a painting. And Lian Yun suddenly said, I didn't expect you to be in the boundless realm. Yi Xian smiled and said, when I was kidnapped by the ghost cultivator sect, why didn't you kill him directly? And Lian Yun glanced at Yi Xian. I don't want anyone to die because of me. Yi Xian was silent. At this time, and Lian Yun said softly, there are very few swordsmen in the alternate world. You're the only boundless swordsman. Can I ask you some questions about Sword Dao? Yi Xian laughed and said, of course. And Lian Yun nodded and said, how did you attain the inaction state? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, my first wish. And Lian Yun looked straight at Yi Xian. My first wish? Yi Xian nodded and smiled. To reach the inaction state, it actually depends on whether one can comprehend it or not. The key is still in oneself, and no one who has reached the inaction state can be replicated. And Lian Yun was silent. Yi Xian said again, take it slow and don't rush things. And Lian Yun nodded. I understand. Just at this moment, a man suddenly appeared in the distance. He wore a white robe, had long hair, and was very handsome. When the man saw Yi Xian, he was slightly startled. Then a trace of darkness flashed in the depths of his eyes, but he still had a bright smile on his face. The man casually plucked a cherry blossom and slowly walked before Lian Yun. He smiled and said, Lian Yun, you're really beautiful today. And Lian Yun looked at the man. Young Master Wan, what's the matter? Young Master Wan? Yi Xian looked at the man. Could this guy be from the 10,000 Dao sect? The man faintly smiled. Nothing much, I just wanted to see you. Hearing this, and Lian Yun frowned slightly. Young Master Wan, I have something to do right now. Obviously, she was a bit unhappy to be disturbed by this man. Hearing in Lian Yun's words, the man looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Lian Yun, this is? And Lian Yun's expression was a bit unhappy. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Lian Yun and smiled. I know why you can't break through. And Lian Yun looked at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian smiled. Because you've been wronging yourself. As he spoke, he glanced at the man and smiled. You hate him, don't you? The man's eyes narrowed slightly, and his expression was unfriendly. And Lian Yun was also slightly startled. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to say this. Yi Xian continued, since you hate him, then why don't you say it? Why do you have to wrong yourself because of others? Doing this is equivalent to putting a layer of shackles on your sword heart. How can a shackled sword heart break through? Hearing this, and Lian Yun was stunned. Yi Xian continued, we swordsmen should be straightforward. If we like someone, then we like him. If we don't like him, then we don't like him. Don't wrong yourself because of others. Be decisive, understand? The man in front of Yi Xian suddenly smiled sinisterly. Sir, do you think I'm invisible? And Lian Yun suddenly raised her head and looked at the man. Scram. Scram. Hearing this, the man was stunned. And Lian Yun looked at the man coldly. I'll say it one last time. Scram. The man's expression became extremely ugly. Lian Yun. And Lian Yun's eyes narrowed slightly. Did I ask you to call me Lian Yun? As soon as she finished speaking, the sword in her hand suddenly flew out. The man's expression instantly changed, and he blocked with his right arm. Bang! The man was directly pushed back hundreds of meters. And Lian Yun looked at Yi Xian. How comfortable! Yi Xian smiled. Remember, you have to look straight at your heart. If you like someone, then you like them. If you don't like them, then you don't like them. Don't wrong yourself. And Lian Yun nodded. I understand. At this moment, The man in the distance suddenly shouted, "Who are you?" Yi Xian looked at the man and smiled. "Yi Xian, if your 10,000 Dao sect isn't satisfied, then come at me for revenge. No matter how many come, I'm invincible. You can do whatever you want." Hearing this, Lianyun couldn't help but look at Yi Xian. There was a strange light in her beautiful eyes. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 2001. I'm invincible, you can do whatever you want. When Yi Xian said this, he was very calm, but his voice was filled with invincible confidence. In the distance, when the man heard Yi Xian's words, his pupils shrank. "You are Yi Xian?" Yi Xian. Of course he had heard of him. He was the young sect master of the 10,000 Dao sect, and his father was Wan Daoming. Not long ago, his father had lost to Yi Xian. The man didn't dare to act rashly again. He bowed deeply. "I didn't know it was Venerable Yi. Please forgive me for offending you." Yi Xian smiled. "I thought you were going to say a few more harsh words." The man lowered his head slightly and didn't dare to speak. Harsh words? Although he was the young sect master of the 10,000 Dao sect and was usually domineering, he wasn't stupid enough to say harsh words to an inaction realm cultivator. At this moment, Yi Xian looked at Lianyun. "Let's go." Lianyun nodded. The two of them left. Seeing Yi Xian leave, the man sighed in relief and slipped away. In the distance, Lianyun softly said, "Thank you." Yi Xian smiled. "What are you thanking me for?" Lianyun looked at Yi Xian. "The pointers you gave me just now." Yi Xian faintly smiled. "It's still the same words. Be yourself and don't wrong yourself." Lianyun nodded. She hesitated for a bit and said, "I want to go into closed-door cultivation for a while." Yi Xian smiled. "Okay, let's talk next time." With that he turned and left. Lianyun looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared into the distance. After Yi Xian disappeared, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared beside Lianyun. This person was the sect master of the Fang Inch sect, Bashan. Bashan looked at Yi Xian in the distance and said, "What do you think of him?" Lianyun said, "Very good." Bashan didn't speak. Lianyun looked at Bashan. "What do you think, father?" Bashan smiled. "Don't let me think. You should think for yourself." Lianyun nodded. "Understood." Bashan nodded. "You must have gained a lot. Go into seclusion for a while." Lianyun nodded. "All right." With that, she turned around and left. After Lianyun disappeared, Bashan turned around and disappeared. On the other side, Yi Xian stopped. A middle-aged man appeared in front of him. It was Bashan. Yi Xian smiled. "What's the matter, senior?" He had already guessed the other party's identity because he had sensed the other party just now. Bashan said, "Shall we talk?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "All right." The two of them walked into the distance. On the way, Bashan suddenly said, "You're very mysterious." Yi Xian smiled and said, "I know what Senior is worried about. Senior is afraid that I have some sort of ulterior motive for coming into contact with Lianyun, right?" Bashan looked at Yi Xian. "You're so direct. However, I like how direct you are." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior can rest assured that I have no ulterior motive for coming into contact with Lianyun. I can also take the initiative to promise Senior that I won't do anything to harm Lianyun." Bashan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, "Although I have never been a father, I understand the heart of a father. I think Senior's worry is very normal. As I said, I have no ulterior motive for coming into contact with Missin." Bashan silently pondered for a moment and said, "I believe you." With that, he looked at Yi Xian. "Be careful of the 10,000 Dao sect." Yi Xian was slightly startled and said, "Do they want to kill me?" Bashan said, "Your appearance made them feel a sense of crisis." They felt a sense of crisis. Not only them, but the Inch sect also felt a sense of crisis. However, we are relatively fine because we don't have much conflict with your Dao Spirit Palace. However, they do. Not only that, the resources of the entire world aren't enough. Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Not enough?" Bashan nodded slightly. In short, you have to be careful. Seeing that Bashan wasn't willing to say more, Yixian didn't ask more. He immediately said, "Thank you for the reminder, senior." Bashan stopped. "It's me, thank you for teaching Lianyun." Yixian smiled. "It's a small matter." Bashan nodded. "Take care." After saying that, he disappeared. Yixian silently pondered for a moment and then turned to leave. However, he had only taken a few steps when the space before him suddenly distorted. The next moment, he entered an unknown and mysterious space. Not far in front of him stood a middle-aged man. It was Wan Daoming. Behind him and to his right stood two middle-aged men. Yixian glanced at the middle-aged man on the right. This middle-aged man wore a black robe and had his hands behind his back. He had a faint smile on his face. Danger. Among the three of them, this middle-aged man gave him a sense of danger. Sensing Yixian's gaze, the middle-aged man smiled and said, "I'm Fan Tian." Yixian smiled. "What, are you going to gang up on me?" Fan Tian smiled. "Let me fight you first." Yixian nodded. "All right." As he spoke, he opened his palm and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. Fan Tian suddenly smiled. "Aren't you going to ask why we're targeting you?" Yixian laughed. "I don't think that's necessary. My life's creed is to be indifferent to life and death. If you can't accept it, then fight." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hand suddenly flew out. In the distance, Fan Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He took a step forward and suddenly punched out. At the instant he punched out, a ray of white light suddenly surged out from his fist. Bang! In an instant, Yixian's attack was devoured by the ray of white light. At the same time, the space in front of Yixian was blasted into pieces by a fist, and then the formidable fist shot towards Yixian's face. Yixian's expression was calm. When the fist arrived in front of him, the green profound sword in his hand transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. Bang! The fist was blocked by the sword shield. But in the next moment, Yixian's pupils constricted. He swiftly raised his head and saw a figure descend straight towards him. It was Fan Tian. Yixian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Overlapped sword strikes to decide life and death. Bang! At the instant he swung his sword, the space in the surroundings seemed like glass that had been struck by an iron hammer, and it shattered into pieces. Countless strands of sword energy shot into the surroundings, and the surroundings were in a mess. Meanwhile, Yixian retreated over 1 kilometer, and he just stopped when a spear tore through the air towards him. Yixian's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't defend himself, and he stabbed with his sword instead. He went head-on against it. As soon as the sword and spear collided, bang! A terrifying force suddenly erupted from the battlefield. Yixian and Fan Tian retreated at the same time. In the process of retreating, a flying sword suddenly appeared in front of Fan Tian. Fan Tian swept with his spear. Bang! The flying sword was instantly swept flying. But in the next moment, Yixian suddenly appeared above him, and then a strand of sword light slashed down. As soon as this sword descended, countless strands of space in the surroundings were instantly obliterated. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Fan Tian's eyes. "Come!" As soon as he finished speaking, he attacked instead of defending, and he stabbed his spear upwards. A sharp sound of something tearing apart resounded. Bang! An expanse of sword energy suddenly shattered. In the next moment, both of them retreated madly, and the green profound sword in Yixian's hand suddenly flew up into the air. The space here was instantly torn apart. Fan Tian raised his spear horizontally to block the attack. Bang! The spear shook violently, and Fan Tian was pushed over 1 kilometer back. But in the next moment, he tossed the spear forward, and it was like a bolt of lightning that instantly arrived before Yixian. Meanwhile, a sword and a shield appeared in front of Yixian. Bang! The sword and shield trembled violently when they were struck by the spear, and a powerful force swept out like a wave. Meanwhile, Fan Tian stretched his right hand forward, and the spear returned to his grasp. He was about to attack again when a flying sword suddenly slashed towards him. Fan Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. The speed of Yi Xian's flying sword had exceeded his expectations. He didn't think too much about it, and he charged forward and slashed with his spear. Bang! The flying sword was blocked. At this moment, Yi Xian showed up in front of him like a ghost. The next second, he swung his sword straight down. Life and death are decided by unsheathing the sword. Bang! As a wave of sword energy erupted, Fan Tian retreated over 3 kilometers. But he hadn't even stopped when another flying sword slashed towards him. Fan Tian frowned slightly, and he blocked with his spear horizontally. Bang! The spear shook violently, and Fan Tian retreated again. But in the next moment, his body became illusory. In the blink of an eye, a few dozen afterimages appeared around Yi Xian, and there were also a few dozen spears. Every single one of the afterimages was real. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. The green profound sword had already returned, but it was still too late. He couldn't use his sword and shield to block this attack. It was obvious that this was a premeditated move by Fan Tian, and he didn't want Yi Xian to have a chance to use his sword and shield. At this critical moment, Yi Xian took a step forward, and in the next moment, countless rays of sword energy drowned him and Fan Tian. Bang! In an instant, the rays of sword energy were destroyed, and Fan Tian had returned to his original position. A drop of blood slowly dripped down from the spear in his hand. There was a deep gash between his brows and his lips, and as blood flowed out, his face became a bloody face. In the distance, there was a hole on the left side of Yi Xian's chest, and it had been penetrated. Wan Daoming and Yan Bingshan had quite solemn expressions on their faces when they witnessed this scene. They were clearly aware of Fan Tian's strength, but they hadn't imagined that Yi Xian would actually be able to hold his own against a veteran inaction realm cultivator like Fan Tian. As expected of an inaction swordsman. Suddenly, the space here was torn apart, and then Dao Ling and Yan Bingshan appeared here. Wan Daoming's face fell when he saw them. He was unable to kill Yi Xian now. Dao Ling glanced coldly at Wan Daoming and the others, and then she turned around to gaze at Yi Xian. Are you all right? Yi Xian shook his head. Dao Ling nodded slightly. Let's go back first. Wan Daoming said, let's go. As he spoke, the three of them intended to leave. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Is it over? Everyone gazed at Yi Xian while Dao Ling spoke solemnly. Let's go back first. Yi Xian smiled. Let's go back. As he spoke, he gazed at Wan Daoming and grinned. At the moment all of you acted against me, then you should have been prepared to fight me to the death. Someone must die today, and it's either all of you or me. As soon as he finished speaking, bang, he was completely covered in blood. His bloodline had been completely activated. Yi Xian turned around to look at Dao Ling. Big sister, don't stop me. Otherwise, I'll kill you as well. Dao Ling was speechless. Chapter 2002. At the instant that Yi Xian's bloodline was activated, the expressions of everyone here had changed. Because Yi Xian's aura had risen explosively after his bloodline was activated. Moreover, the killing intent and viciousness he emanated was so strong that it caused everyone here to be visibly moved. What sort of bloodline is that? Dao Ling was shocked as well. She hadn't expected that the energy of Yi Xian's bloodline would actually be so terrifying. Most importantly, she hadn't expected that Yi Xian would actually be so infuriated and intend to fight to the death. After all, it was very difficult for inaction realm experts to kill each other. They didn't have an advantage in numbers. Suddenly, Yi Xian transformed into a ray of blood-red light that charged at Fan Tian. It was so swift that it caused Fan Tian's expression to instantly change violently. He didn't dare act carelessly in the slightest, and he twisted his arm while his spear stabbed forward like a raging dragon. He was going head-on against Jin Shi. Bang! As soon as he stabbed forward, he withdrew his spear as if he'd been electrocuted. At the same time, Fan Tian retreated explosively for 3 kilometers, and he just stopped when a blood-red sword suddenly slashed towards him. Fan Tian's pupils constricted, and he swiftly raised his spear to block it. Bang! The spear shook the surroundings, and Fan Tian retreated once more. Moreover, the spear in his hand had cracked apart. Wan Daoming's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene. The energy of his bloodline is so great? At this moment, Yi Xian was actually suppressing Fan Tian. Fan Tian had just stopped when an expanse of blood-red light assaulted his face. Fan Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he charged forward while stabbing his spear forward. In an instant, a powerful force that seemed like a volcano that had been accumulating strength for tens of thousands of years had suddenly erupted, and it swept out from his spear. Bang! In an instant, the space in an area of a few million kilometers seethed. Meanwhile, Yi Xian drew his sword and slashed. He drew his sword to decide life and death. He fought head-on. Bang! As soon as Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the mysterious space in an area of a few million kilometers was instantly obliterated. It was pitch black. At the same time, Yi Xian and Fan Tian both retreated rapidly, and they retreated for hundreds of kilometers. The moment Fan Tian stopped, the long spear in his hand turned into nothingness. However, Yi Xian's sword was not damaged at all. Seeing this scene, Wan Daoming's face immediately became ugly. He had experienced the power of the sword in Yi Xian's hand before. In the entire alternate world, perhaps only the legendary heavenly plan saber in the hands of Mu Shun could contend against it. The most terrifying thing was not this sword, but the power of Yi Xian's bloodline. After Yi Xian activated the power of his bloodline, his aura kept increasing explosively, as if there was no limit. From afar, Fan Tian slowly raised his head and stared at Yi Xian. At this moment, his eyes were filled with a hint of seriousness. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's palm suddenly opened, and the green profound sword flew out. A ray of blood-red light tore through the battlefield. A wisp of viciousness flashed through Fan Tian's eyes. He suddenly squatted down, pulled his right hand back, and then clenched it into a fist. In the blink of an eye, he smashed his fist forward. Bang! A powerful barrier appeared in front of him. The fist domain. When Yi Xian's blood-red sword entered the fist domain, the green profound sword actually started to warp. However, the fist domain started to tremble violently as well. Meanwhile, Fan Tian suddenly stretched forward and grabbed the green profound sword with his right hand while a ferocious expression flashed through his eyes. Shatter! As soon as he finished speaking, he exerted force with his right hand. Bang! The green profound sword shook violently, and then a ray of dazzling light erupted from it. However, it didn't shatter. Fan Tian was stunned. It didn't shatter? Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him, and then a ray of light enveloped him. Core domain. This. The sound of something tearing resounded from within the core domain. In the blink of an eye, a figure retreated explosively from within the core domain. It was Fan Tian. Fan Tian retreated for over 10 kilometers before he stopped. At this moment, his entire body was covered in almost 10 scars. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword suddenly flew out. Fan Tian's pupils constricted, and he swiftly raised his arms to block it. Bang! The ray of light shattered, and Fan Tian retreated for over 10 kilometers again. Moreover, a deep scar had appeared on his right arm. Meanwhile, Yi Xian opened his palm again, and the green profound sword flew out once more. Bang! Fan Tian retreated explosively again. Just like that, Fan Tian retreated over and over again, and he was directly suppressed by Yi Xian's flying sword. When they witnessed this scene, Wan Daoming and the other in-action realm expert, Muge, exchanged glances, and a wisp of shock flashed through their eyes. An in-action swordsman. Yi Xian's combat strength had greatly exceeded their expectations. After all, Fan Tian was a veteran mortal realm expert, and his combat strength was absolutely in the top 5 amongst the mortal realm experts of this world. However, at this moment, Fan Tian was actually being suppressed by Yi Xian. It wasn't just Wan Daoming and Muge who were extremely shocked, even Dao Ling and Yan Bangshan were extremely shocked. They hadn't expected that Yi Xian's combat strength would actually be so terrifying. Especially the strength of Yi Xian's bloodline. It could simply be described as terrifying. Besides that, The sword in Yi Xian's hand had increased Yi Xian's combat strength by at least 30% to 40%. Meanwhile, Fan Tian was pushed over 30 kilometers back by a single swing of Yi Xian's sword, and Fan Tian's right arm was covered in scars. Fan Tian had a ferocious expression on his face after he stopped moving. He raised his head to look at Yi Xian, and there wasn't a trace of composure on his face anymore. He slowly clenched his right fist, and then another ray of light slashed towards him. Fan Tian charged forward and smashed his fist forward. At the instant he did, a strange scene appeared. His soul had suddenly left his body, and his body had been slashed into pieces by Yi Xian's attack. However, his soul had arrived in front of Yi Xian, and his soul was still in the posture of a punch. He'd abandoned his body for this punch. Dao Ling's pupils constricted. Divine Soul Technique. As soon as she finished speaking, she charged at Yi Xian. Divine Soul Technique. Every inaction realm elite had their own strongest techniques, and the Divine Soul art was without a doubt mortal realm's strongest technique. It was equivalent to a secret technique that sacrificed his body to improve his soul. At this moment, the might of Fan Tian's punch was at least 10 times stronger than before. Fan Tian wanted to kill Yi Xian. At the instant that a Dao Ling attacked, Wan Daoming vanished on the spot as well. He'd stopped a Dao Ling. He naturally knew that Fan Tian wanted to kill Yi Xian, so he naturally wouldn't allow a Dao Ling to stop Fan Tian. At the same time, Muge stopped Yan Bianshan, who was about to attack as well. In the distance, when Fan Tian's soul arrived in front of Yi Xian's expression was surprisingly calm. The Qingxian sword in his hand trembled slightly. In the next moment, he stabbed out. Soul-setting strike. What was the most terrifying aspect of the green profound sword? It countered souls. This sword countered souls. Coupled with the soul-setting strike that Qing'er had taught him, it could be said that the combat strength of souls in front of him would be at least 10 times weaker. As soon as Yi Xian stabbed forward with his sword, bang! Fan Tian's soul was blasted back, and it flew over 10 kilometers away. He just stopped over 30 kilometers away when a sword appeared above his head, and then it locked onto his soul. Everyone was dumbfounded. Wan Daoming looked at Yi Xian in the distance in disbelief. This, Muge's expression became extremely ugly. In the distance, Fan Tian looked at Yi Xian blankly. How is this possible? Yi Xian suddenly spread out his right hand and pressed down lightly. The green profound sword descended and entered Fan Tian's soul. Bang! Fan Tian's soul disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Devour! Seeing that the green profound sword could devour Fan Tian's soul, Wan Daoming and Muge's expressions changed drastically. At this moment, they understood. Yi Xian's sword could suppress souls. Fan Tian understood as well. He looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "So that's how it is." As he spoke, his soul became more and more illusory. Not long after, his soul disappeared. It was completely absorbed by the green profound sword. Yi Xian opened his palm and Fan Tian's storage ring flew into his hand. Then he turned to look at Wan Daoming. Seeing Yi Xian look over, Wan Daoming's eyes narrowed. "Yi Xian, do you want the 10,000 Dao sect and Dao Ling palace to fight to the death?" Whether it was the 10,000 Dao sect or Dao Ling palace, both feared each other. Both were super forces, and if they fought to the death, the consequences would be unimaginable. Moreover, there was also the Feng Heart sect. Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He slowly walked toward Wan Daoming. "When you came to target me, you should have been prepared to fight to the death. As for the 10,000 Dao sect..." With that, he grinned. "Do you think that after today, the 10,000 Dao sect will still exist?" After he spoke, he turned into a ray of blood-colored sword energy and disappeared. A ray of blood-colored sword energy tore through the battlefield. Wan Daoming's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene. In the next moment, he opened his right hand, and a flame suddenly rose from his palm. In the blink of an eye, his entire body was enveloped by the flame, and then he charged forward and blasted a flaming fist towards Yi Xian. Rumble! A ray of sword energy and flames erupted, and then a figure retreated repeatedly. It was Wan Daoming. Wan Daoming retreated like crazy, and his expression was extremely ugly because he noticed that Yi Xian was much stronger than before. What kind of bloodline is this? He didn't have time to think because Yi Xian was charging at him once more. A ferocious smile appeared on Wan Daoming's face as he charged forward once more. At this moment, Dao Ling suddenly looked at Muge. "Aren't you going to run?" Muge looked at Dao Ling with a gloomy expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Dao Ling smiled. "If you don't run now, you won't have the chance to run anymore." Muge threw a look at Wan Daoming, who was suppressed by Yi Xian in the distance. Then he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. After Muge left, Dao Ling's smile gradually turned cold. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Do you need help?" In the distance, Yi Xian turned to look at Dao Ling and grinned. "Under 3 strikes, I'm invincible." Dao Ling. P.S. The new chapter has been written. Everyone can follow my WeChat public account. Search for the WeChat public account on Green Phoenix Peak and click Follow to watch the new chapter. The big boss of the Milky Way galaxy has appeared. There were many fake public accounts. Everyone just had to follow on the Green Phoenix Peak. Anything else with a title or more words were all fake. Chapter 2003. 3 Swords? Dao Ling was a bit confused. What were the 3 swords that Yi Xian was talking about? She wanted to ask more, but Yi Xian had already rushed out. In the distance, Yi Xian was directly suppressing Wan Daoming. At this moment, Wan Daoming had no temper at all. Just at this moment, Wan Daoming was suddenly pushed back by a ray of sword energy. The next moment, Wan Daoming turned around and disappeared into the horizon. Escaped? Yi Xian was startled. This guy actually escaped? Without thinking too much, Yi Xian rode his sword and disappeared at the end of time and space. He naturally wouldn't stop at this moment. Seeing Yi Xian chase, Dao Ling softly said, "Let's go." As soon as she finished speaking, she disappeared with Yan Bianshan. 10,000 Dao sect. Wan Daoming directly fled back to the 10,000 Dao sect. He had nowhere else to go. Just as he returned to the 10,000 Dao sect, the sky behind him turned into a sea of blood. The next moment, a sword slashed down from the sea of blood. Wan Daoming narrowed his eyes slightly. He opened his palm, and a flame soared into the sky. However, as soon as the flame touched Yi Xian's blood sword, it was torn apart. The blood sword slashed down straight. Wan Daoming's eyes revealed a hint of viciousness. He stomped his right foot and his body turned into a pillar of fire that shot into the sky. Boom! In the sky, the blood sword was forced to stop by the pillar of fire, but the next moment Wan Daoming fell straight down from the sky. Boom! When Wan Daoming fell into the 10,000 Dao sect, the entire sect trembled and countless mountains collapsed. The entire 10,000 Dao sect was shocked. In the sky, Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He looked down at Wan Daoming. At this moment, Wan Daoming's right arm was gone. His fire couldn't stop Yi Xian's sword at all. Most importantly, Yi Xian's strength was constantly increasing, and the more he fought, the stronger he became. Below, Wan Daoming stared at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, are you really going to be so ruthless?" Yi Xian nodded. "That's what we have to do." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. A blood sword appeared above Wan Daoming's head like a ghost, and a small black hole appeared at the tip of the sword. The next moment, this small black hole rapidly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, a terrifying force swept across the entire 10,000 Dao sect. The expressions of all the powerful cultivators of the 10,000 Dao sect changed greatly and they fled in all directions. Wan Daoming, who was in the lead, suddenly narrowed his eyes. He clenched his left hand, and in an instant, the space-time in front of him formed a space-time wall. Not only that, but the space-time energy in the surroundings converged towards him like a tide. Defend. In the face of Yi Xian's sword, he could only defend. This was because a head-on clash required both sides to be equal in strength. If they were not equal, then the weaker side would have to bear twice the force. At this moment, he could no longer withstand such terrifying power. He could only choose to defend. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword fell. Boom! The space-time wall directly shattered, and Wan Daoming's entire body was thrown into a mysterious space-time abyss. Just at this moment, a flying sword appeared before him once more. Wan Daoming's pupils suddenly shrank and he began to chant a mysterious incantation. The next moment, the space-time before him began to distort, and the green profound sword also began to distort. At the sight of this, Yi Xian, who was in the sky, frowned slightly. This power was a little weird. At this moment, with a thought, the green profound sword trembled violently. Boom! The green profound sword directly broke the strange power, but at this moment Wan Daoming had already retreated tens of thousands of feet. Yi Xian looked at Wan Daoming. He glanced at Wan Daoming in the distance. Time! That strange power just now contained the attribute of time. Wan Daoming stared at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. What kind of sword is this? He found that a lot of his power was restrained by this sword, or rather, it was useless against this sword. Yi Xian did not waste any time. He disappeared from where he was. Wan Daoming's expression changed greatly. He didn't retreat anymore and stomped his right foot. Boom! His entire body began to burn. Burn his body. Burn his soul. He knew that he had no way out. Because Dao Ling and Yan Bianshan weren't too far away, and it was impossible for him to survive when 3 inaction realm experts were here. Since there was no chance of survival, then he might as well go all out. After he chose to burn his body and soul, Wan Daoming's aura instantly rose explosively. In the next moment, he transformed into a pillar of flames that shot into the sky. In an instant, the surrounding space-time was transformed into ash. Rumble! In the horizon, a flash of sword light and a flash of fire suddenly exploded. Yi Xian retreated explosively for over 100 kilometers. As soon as he stopped, his body split apart and blood sprayed. Moreover, his soul was vanishing at a terrifying speed. A heavy injury. Meanwhile, Wan Daoming had stopped in the distance, and a sword was stuck in the center of his forehead. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his grasp. At the moment he held onto the sword, his soul started to gradually return to normal. The green profound sword wasn't just able to restrain the soul, it could even nurture it. Seeing that Yi Xian's soul had stabilized, Wan Daoming slowly closed his eyes. Failed. Even though he had traded his life for his strongest attack, he still couldn't seriously injure Yi Xian. He had lost. And if he lost, he would have to pay with his life. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword entered the center of Wan Daoming's forehead. Boom! Wan Daoming's soul was directly absorbed. Shortly after, Wan Daoming's soul disappeared completely, and his storage ring flew to Yi Xian. Yi Xian put away the storage ring and turned to look at the powerful cultivators of the 10,000 Dao sect. At this moment, Dao Ling appeared beside him. "Leave the 10,000 Dao sect to me." Yi Xian nodded and didn't say much. He turned around and disappeared into the horizon. The entire sky was blood red. Dao Ling looked into the distance, and no one knew what she was thinking. At this moment, Yan Bianshan appeared beside Dao Ling. "Is teacher worried about something?" Dao Ling nodded. "This little fellow is too hot-tempered." "Hot-tempered?" Yan Bianshan nodded. "He is indeed hot-tempered." The two women didn't expect things to develop to this extent. In an instant, 2 inaction realm cultivators had fallen. Moreover, they were both killed by Yi Xian. Yi Xian had the ability to kill inaction realm cultivators. Dao Ling had a complicated expression. Originally, there was a balance between the inaction realm cultivators of the other world, but now, with Yi Xian's arrival, this balance had been broken. Inaction realm cultivators were no longer high and mighty. Inaction realm cultivators would also die. A moment later, Dao Ling softly said, "Let's go." With that, she turned around and left. Yan Bianshan also left. After the 3 of them left, it didn't take long for countless powerful cultivators of the 10,000 Dao sect to die. Obviously, it was all done by Dao Ling Palace. Dao Ling was a smart woman. She naturally understood that she had to be ruthless. With the destruction of the 10,000 Dao sect, the entire other world was shocked. A former superpower was annihilated in a single night. The news of Yi Xian killing Wan Daoming and Fan Tian also spread. Yi Xian. This name, once again, shocked the entire other world. An inaction realm swordsman had killed 2 inaction realm cultivators. In an instant, Yi Xian's name spread throughout the other world like a plague. Soon, some busybodies began to compare Yi Xian to the current #1 inaction realm cultivator, Mu Shen. Fang Xiyuan sect. On a certain mountain peak, Bashan looked at the distant sky with a solemn expression. Wan Daoming and Fan Tian were dead. They were all killed by Yi Xian. The 10,000 Dao sect was also gone. It had to be said that even he found it unbelievable. This Yi Xian actually had the strength to kill Fan Tian and Wan Daoming. It has to be said that before this, the inaction realm cultivators of the other world basically wouldn't fight because everyone knew that no one could do anything to the other. But now, Yi Xian had the strength to kill inaction realm cultivators one-on-one. Yi Xian. Bashan slowly closed his eyes. After a while, he suddenly said, "Prepare a gift and send it to Venerable Yi of Dao Ling Palace. Tell him to thank him for his guidance to Lian Yun. When Lian Yun comes out of seclusion, I will bring Lian Yun to visit him." In the dark, an old man hesitated for a moment and then said, "He has the intention to curry favor." Bashan smiled. "For Lian Yun, I can do anything." The old man nodded slightly. "Understood." With that he left. And Lian Yun was a swordsman, but it was still very difficult for him to reach an action realm. If he had Yi Xian's guidance, it would be much easier. However, what right did Yi Xian have to guide him? After all, Lian Yun was not from Dao Ling Palace, and even if she was, she might not necessarily be able to guide him. In action realm, who would casually teach their unique skill? At that moment, the entire alternate world was discussing Yi Xian, the inaction swordsman who had just appeared. Yi Xian also gained many titles, such as the alternate world's #1 swordsman, the alternate world's youngest inaction realm expert, and so on. At that moment, Yi Xian had already returned to Dao Ling Palace. Healing. Inside Xiao Ta, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and began to heal his injuries. At that moment, his expression was solemn. Before, he had actually made a mistake, and that was to underestimate Wan Daoming. Wan Daoming's final attack had almost killed him. Not only Wan Daoming, but Fan Tian's final attack. If not for the Qingxian sword, he might have also died. Yi Xian knew very well that although he had killed 2 inaction realm experts, he could not underestimate any inaction realm expert. To be able to reach an action realm, one must have some ability. Moreover, there was another reason why he could kill inaction realm experts, and that was the Qingxian sword. Strictly speaking, the Qingxian sword was an external object. He could not be arrogant. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes and began to focus on healing his injuries. Gradually, Yi Xian's body began to rapidly recover. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Undying bloodline. Why didn't he upgrade the undying bloodline? The undying bloodline's function was very heaven-defying. If he could upgrade the undying bloodline, then when he fought in the future, unless his opponent killed him instantly, he would always be in an invincible position. To upgrade the undying bloodline, it was very simple. He could use the Mad Demon bloodline to upgrade the undying bloodline. He could merge the undying bloodline with a bit of the Mad Demon bloodline. Yi Xian immediately did it. Chapter 2004. Bloodline Fusion. Yi Xian began to use the Mad Demonic bloodline to make up for the Immortal bloodline. However, Yi Xian realized that it was very difficult, because the Mad Demonic bloodline was already much stronger than the Immortal bloodline. The Mad Demonic bloodline would not fuse with the Immortal bloodline, or directly devour the Immortal bloodline. This made him a little embarrassed. However, Yi Xian did not give up. After all, he was the master. Under Yi Xian's control, gradually, his Mad Demonic bloodline and Immortal bloodline began to fuse. Of course, he did not fuse all of it. He only took out a little bit of the Mad Demonic bloodline to fuse with the Immortal bloodline. Even so, The effect was very terrifying. The immortal bloodline's aura began to skyrocket. As for the mad demonic bloodline, it was suppressed by him. If he did not suppress the mad demonic bloodline, the immortal bloodline could not be activated. Although it was his bloodline power, the mad demonic bloodline was very domineering. If he hadn't been suppressing it earlier, his immortal bloodline would have been swallowed by it. The mad demonic bloodline had been unhappy for a long time that the immortal bloodline could exist in his body. Just like that, time passed little by little. After a few months, Yixian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly burst out an extremely terrifying bloodline aura. Boom! With the appearance of this bloodline aura, the space in Xiaota's body began to tremble. After a long time, a red light appeared around Yixian's body. Immortal bloodline. At this time, Yixian suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes, the blood color gradually faded. Su Wang suddenly appeared in front of Yixian. Yixian's mouth slightly curled up. Su Wang asked, "Improved?" Yixian nodded. He opened his palm and gently pressed down. With this, his whole body returned to normal. Immortal bloodline. Yixian chuckled. This immortal bloodline has been improved. In the future, my body's healing speed will greatly increase. Su Wang said, "Congratulations." Yixian laughed. Actually, he was very curious about the Undying Imperial clan. His Undying bloodline had already made a breakthrough. He wondered if the Undying Imperial clan's Undying bloodline had any changes. When I have time, I have to go back and take a look. As if he had thought of something, Yixian suddenly opened his palm and 2 storage rings appeared in his hand. These were the storage rings he had obtained from Wan Daoming and Fan Tian. Yixian swept a glance. In the 2 storage rings, there were actually less than 200,000 immeasurable divine crystals. The total value of the 2 storage rings was less than 200,000. Yixian frowned. Was he that poor? Besides that, there were also some divine objects. However, they weren't of much use to him. After all, he had the Azure Sword. This sword could both attack and defend, so no divine object could compare to it. Yixian handed one of the storage rings to Su Wang and said, "There are 100,000 immeasurable divine crystals in there, so you better spend them sparingly." Su Wang didn't refuse and took the storage ring. Then he looked at Yixian. "Should we spar?" Yixian smiled. "That's exactly what I was thinking." The 2 of them left Xiaota and arrived at an unknown and mysterious space. Su Wang looked at Yixian. "You can't use the Azure Sword." Yixian laughed. "Of course." He opened his palm and an ordinary sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and disappeared on the spot. A ray of sword light instantly appeared before Su Wang's forehead. Su Wang's body suddenly became illusory. Yixian narrowed his eyes and suddenly turned around to slash down. Boom! The ray of sword light shattered, and the 2 of them retreated at the same time. As the 2 of them retreated, countless flying swords suddenly slashed at them from all directions. In an instant, the entire mysterious space was filled with flying swords, and it was impossible to tell who was who. Numerous dense sounds of tearing resounded incessantly in the surroundings. Flying swords. Both of them were using flying swords. Because every single flying sword was tearing through everything to its heart's content. Not only did the number of flying swords not decrease, there were more and more of them instead. In a short period of time, there were at least a few 100,000 flying swords here. Both of them were controlling at least 200,000 flying swords. Needless to say, it was extremely mentally exhausting. Moreover, every single one of their flying swords was lethal, and the slightest carelessness might cause their bodies to be destroyed. They were playing with their hearts. Right at this moment, both of them stopped at the same time. A moment later, they exchanged a glance, and then all the flying swords vanished in an instant. Because neither of their flying swords could do anything to the other. Meanwhile, Su Wang slowly closed her eyes and charged forward. As soon as she did, her body froze on the spot, and then her soul left her body and transformed into a ray of light that slashed at Yixian. Yixian took a step forward. In the blink of an eye, a beam of sword light shrouded him. Core Sword Domain. As soon as Su Wang's soul charged into the core sword domain, the entire domain instantly became illusory, and then it actually started to be obliterated inch by inch. It didn't take long for Yi Xian's core sword domain to shatter, and then a sword stabbed towards the center of Yi Xian's forehead like a thunderclap. It was extremely swift. Yi Xian's reaction was very swift. He'd suddenly moved to the side at the instant his core sword domain shattered, and he'd barely dodged the attack. But right at this moment, Su Wang slashed horizontally with her sword. An expanse of light slashed straight towards Yi Xian's throat. If this attack were to hit, then Yi Xian's head would be instantly separated from his body. However, right when this attack was about to strike Yi Xian's throat, another sword blocked Su Wang's attack. Bang! An expanse of light shattered, and then Yi Xian was blasted over 1 kilometer back. However, he didn't stop moving and he stabbed with his sword once more. Yi Xian's expression was calm. This time, he didn't choose to retreat, and he stabbed with his sword instead. Neither side was willing to give in. Bang! As soon as the two swords collided, the surrounding space was instantly obliterated and shattered. After that, countless strands of sword chi shot out from the surroundings, and every single strand of sword chi could easily tear the space in the universe apart. Right at this moment, their figures turned ethereal at the same time. In the blink of an eye, 2 rays of light suddenly erupted like fireworks. In an instant, the space in an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers was obliterated. After Yi Xian stopped moving, Su Wang suddenly appeared above him, and then a strand of light slashed down. Sword draw to decide life and death. Yi Xian's expression became slightly solemn as soon as this attack descended. In the past, he'd always executed sword draw to decide life and death against others, and he'd never faced the strength of this attack head-on. But at this moment, he suddenly realized that his father had some ability. This attack was really quite amazing. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it. He didn't retreat, but he advanced instead, and he similarly drew his sword and slashed. Sword draw to decide life and death as well. As soon as the two swords collided, the space in an area of a few million kilometers instantly turned pitch black. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Just like that, after about 15 minutes, Yi Xian and Su Wang left that space-time. Both of them had sword wounds on their bodies, especially Su Wang, whose body was covered in sword light. Because of this, her body was somewhat exposed. Su Wang also noticed this, and his expression became slightly unnatural. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "Your master is a gentleman, and I definitely won't look at what I shouldn't look at." Su Wang. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared in front of Su Wang. He took out a coat and put it on Su Wang. Then he said, "You should have gained a lot from the battle just now. You can cultivate in the tower, and if you need anything, you can tell me directly." Su Wang nodded. But with that, she returned to Xiaota. At this moment, Yi Xian turned and looked not far away. The space-time there split open, and Dao Ling appeared. Dao Ling looked around, and then she smiled. "Were you sparring with someone just now?" Yi Xian nodded. Adeline he cast a deep look at Yi Xian. It was clear that there was another inaction realm elite by Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Elder Sister Ling, when I obtained Fan Tian and Wan Daoming's spatial rings, I discovered that there were only 200,000 immeasurable divine crystals inside. Why is it so little?" Dao Ling said in a deep voice, "Do you think 200,000 immeasurable divine crystals is very little?" Yi Xian frowned and asked, "Is that a lot?" Dao Ling rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "Of course. Do you know that your sister's life savings are less than a few tens of thousands?" When she spoke up to hear, she seemed to have thought of something, and she paused for a moment before continuing. "Did you think I was very stingy when I gave you 10,000 boundless divine crystals earlier?" Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. "A little." Dao Ling shook her head and smiled. "You ungrateful fellow. Let me tell you, immeasurable divine crystals are very, very rare. Even we have to risk our lives to obtain them." Hearing that, Yi Xian was a little curious. Even inaction realm elites have to risk their lives to obtain them? Dao Ling nodded. "Do you remember that I asked you to help me?" Yi Xian nodded. Because of these immeasurable divine crystals? Dao Ling smiled and said, yes. This time, I want to bring you to a place, a forbidden place in the alternate world. Even we might die there. Yi Xian was a little curious. What place? Dao Ling said softly, the heavenly tomb. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The heavenly tomb? What place? Dao Ling smiled and said, a very strange place. Only there are immeasurable divine crystals. It's said that God Mu disappeared from that place. Of course, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it should be true. Because that's the only place in the entire alternate world that we haven't explored clearly. As she spoke, she paused for a moment before she continued. In the past, a huge amount of immeasurable divine crystals would appear in the heavenly tomb every year. But for some unknown reason, the number of immeasurable divine crystals has been decreasing recently. If this continues, then we in Action Realm experts will face an extremely awkward situation, and that's that we won't be able to cultivate anymore. You should be aware that ordinary profound energy is useless to us once we attain the inaction realm. Only divine treasures like immeasurable divine crystals can allow us to continue cultivating. So, I've contacted some inaction realm experts this time. We'll form a group to explore this place and see exactly what secrets it holds. Yi Xian came to an understanding when he heard this. The heavenly tomb. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, I don't really want to go yet. Dao Ling was slightly stunned, and then she said, why? Yi Xian spoke seriously, it wasn't easy for me to become invincible. I don't want to lose this feeling of invincibility. Dao Ling's expression froze. P.S. If you didn't watch yesterday's news, you can take a look. Follow the official WeChat account on Green Phoenix Peak. Then you can watch it in the Sword Domain News section. New news. Qing appears in the Milky Way galaxy. This is a news story that's related to the plot of this book. There will be a sequel to this news story and 2 more news stories in the future. Finally, I've been reflecting recently. Indeed, 2 chapters a day is too little. When I read it in the toilet, I finished reading it before my dad even finished pooping. If I was a little more lame, those 2 chapters would have been completely boring. Just like yesterday, I felt like I finished 2 chapters. Fuck, that's it? That's it? What a joke on Green Phoenix Peak. It's awkward. I understand those who scold me. Sometimes, even I feel like I'm really not a good person. I won't scold myself anymore. I feel like I'm losing face. I'll talk about this awkward question next time. I'll work hard to save chapters. I'll work hard to save chapters and write essays. Remember to follow the official WeChat account on Green Phoenix Peak. Chapter 2005. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Dao Ling was speechless. This guy actually wanted to stay here and bully others. Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian. That's not a good idea. Sometimes, failure is not a bad thing for us. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile and did not say anything else. Those who understood would naturally understand. Those who did not understand would not say anything. Yi Xian said, when are we going? Of course, he would not stay here forever to show off. Having no opponent was indeed a kind of pain. Dao Ling smiled. Now. She was very happy that Yi Xian agreed to go. After all, with Yi Xian's current strength, who dared to underestimate him? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Now. Dao Ling nodded. Is there a problem? Yi Xian smiled. No. Let's go. Dao Ling suddenly opened her palm, and a storage ring appeared in her hand. This was sent by an Baishan of the Fengzuan sect. He said to thank you for your guidance to An Lianyun. Yi Xian glanced at the storage ring. There were 20,000 infinite divine crystals in the ring. Yi Xian looked at Dao Ling. This? Dao Ling smiled. He wants you to guide An Lianyun so that she has a chance to reach the inaction realm. Yi Xian smiled. It's a small matter. Dao Ling blinked. Are you really willing to guide that girl and let her reach the inaction realm? Yi Xian smiled. That girl is kind. If possible, I am willing to help her reach the inaction realm. However, this also depends on the person. Dao Ling smiled. That girl is indeed not bad. With that said, she placed the storage ring in Yi Xian's hand and said, "Let's go." Yi Xian nodded. The two left. In the air, Yi Xian looked down. His intuition told him that this feeling of invincibility would probably be gone for a long time. Soon, the two arrived in a starry sky. And in this starry sky, there were 3 other people. One of them was Yan Bianshan. Other than Yan Bianshan, there was also a middle-aged man and an elder. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Yi Xian, nice to meet you." Yi Xian looked at Dao Ling. Dao Ling smiled and said, "He's Jun Dao Lin from Dao Edge Realm. He's also the first person from Dao Edge Realm to reach an action state." Jun Dao Lin. Yi Xian was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he gazed at Jun Dao Lin and said with a smile, "Jun Dao Lin, nice to meet you. To tell you the truth, I've admired you for a long time. There are still legends about you in the Dao Brink." Jun Daolin laughed heartily. "I never thought that our Dao border realm would have 3 annulled realm cultivators. I must say, our Dao border realm is full of talents." Yi Xian and Dao Ling looked at each other and smiled. Perhaps it was because they were all from the Dao boundary realm, the 3 of them felt a sense of kinship. At this moment, Dao Ling introduced the old man. "This is the Source Venerate, an old senior of our Dao border realm." Yi Xian looked at the Source Venerate and cupped his fists. "Nice to meet you." The Source Venerate didn't put on airs and immediately cupped his fists. "Nice to meet you." At this moment, a voice came from afar. "I'm not late, am I?" Everyone looked over and saw a middle-aged man walking over slowly from afar. It was the square-inch Sexan Beishan. 6 annulled realm cultivators. Yi Xian was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected Dao Ling to call over so many annulled realm cultivators. It seemed that the heavenly tomb was really dangerous. At this moment, Dao Ling said, "Then let's go." As soon as she finished speaking, she flicked her sleeve, and a space-time tunnel appeared in front of them. After everyone entered the space-time tunnel, they began to travel through space. They were very fast. On the way, Yi Xian walked to Dao Ling's side and asked, "Sister Ling, why is the heavenly tomb so dangerous?" Dao Ling smiled. "You'll know when you get there." Yi Xian said, "Can't you reveal it in advance?" Dao Ling thought for a moment and said, "The strangest thing about that place is necro-energy." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Necro-energy?" Dao Ling nodded. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "A special energy?" Dao Ling smiled and said, "We're almost there. Remember, don't be careless when you get there, and don't let the necro-energy get close to you. Otherwise, even the body of an annulled realm expert won't be able to endure it. Moreover, even your soul might be devoured by the necro-energy." Yi Xian nodded slightly. Right at this moment, a ray of white light suddenly appeared at the end of the space-time tunnel. In the next moment, everyone passed through that ray of white light. The white light dispersed, and their feet touched the ground. Yi Xian frowned immediately because he sensed an extremely uncomfortable aura. He opened his eyes, and what entered his eyes was a dim plane. He couldn't see the end of the plane, and the sky above the plane was dark, and it carried an extremely heavy pressure. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Is this the heavenly tomb?" Dao Ling shook her head. "It's not here, it's at the end of the plane. We can't fly here, so we can only walk there." Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. "Why?" Dao Ling pointed at the sky. "There are some dark creatures up there. Although they aren't as terrifying as the necro-energy, they're still very annoying." Yi Xian nodded. "Understood." Everyone continued forward. At this moment, Jun Daolin suddenly smiled and said, "Everyone, my intuition tells me that our journey will be quite bumpy." And Beishan smiled and said, "If things go wrong later, I'll have to flee." All of them smiled knowingly when they heard this. Actually, all of them were very clearly aware that they wouldn't fight to the death. If they really encountered danger that they couldn't defeat, then they would definitely flee. Even though infinite divine crystals were good, their lives were even better. Right at this moment, Jun Daolin suddenly gazed at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Exalted Yi, may I ask who forged this sword in your hand?" All of them gazed at Yi Xian and the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. Actually, all of them were extremely curious about Yi Xian's sword. After all, the reason Yi Xian was able to kill 2 inaction realm experts in succession wasn't just because of his bloodline, it was also because of this sword. Yi Xian glanced at the green profound sword in his hand and smiled. My younger sister forged it. Jun Daolin grinned and didn't ask any further questions. It would be slightly rude to ask any further. On the other hand, Yi Xian was slightly depressed. Why aren't all of you asking anymore? I'll let Qing bring me along to show off. Yi Xian thought for a moment before he smiled. Do all of you want to take a look at this sword? Jun Daolin was slightly stunned, and then he said, Can I? Yi Xian smiled, Of course. As he spoke, he passed the green profound sword to Jun Daolin. Damn it. If I, Yi Xian, want to show off, no one can stop me. Jun Daolin received the green profound sword, and then he sized it up for a short moment before his expression gradually turned solemn. Meanwhile, Inbation and the other Origin Venerate had come over as well, and Dao Ling couldn't help but walk over as well. The expressions of all the inaction realm experts here gradually became solemn. This sword was too special. The space-time Dao contained within it was actually something that even they couldn't understand. As if he'd thought of something, the Origin Venerate suddenly said, Exalted Yi, about Qi Di's death. Yi Xian grinned. When I was in the lower dimensions, his clone went to look for trouble with me. I wasn't at the inaction realm at that time, and he bullied me. So, my younger sister attacked him. All of their expressions became slightly unnatural when they heard this. There's a big shot standing behind this fellow? Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, It's quite a pity. The Origin Venerate asked instinctively, What's a pity? Yi Xian smiled. I thought I would be able to meet her. Unfortunately, I didn't. The Origin Venerate frowned slightly. Didn't she appear? All of them gazed at Yi Xian with slight bewilderment. Yi Xian shook his head. She didn't appear. She just sent her sword here. After that, she killed Qi Di's clone. However, she was too worried about me, so she used Qi Di's clone to kill his main body. Alas, actually, I could have just left Qi Di to deal with myself. Alas, this younger sister of mine is great, but she's too afraid of something happening to me. She likes to kill everything that poses a threat to me. All of their expressions froze. They were shocked. Needless to say, they were completely shocked. He killed Qi Di's main body through a clone. Moreover, Qi Di hadn't even arrived. In the beginning, they'd thought that Qi Di had been killed right in front of them. However, that wasn't the case at all. He killed Qi Di's main body through a clone? What sort of strength would be needed to accomplish that? After all, Qi Di was at the inactivity realm. Under normal circumstances, an expert at such a realm would be able to flee even if he wasn't a match for his opponent. However, Qi Di had died. What did that mean? It meant that Qi didn't even have a chance to flee. An expert above the inactivity realm? Their expressions became unsightly when they thought up to this point. Meanwhile, the Origin Venerate gazed at Yi Xian, hesitated for a moment, and then said, Venerate Yi. If I may be so bold as to ask, what cultivation realm is your younger sister at? All of them gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. I don't know either. However, there's one thing I'm sure of, and it's that she's definitely far beyond the inactivity realm. The Origin Venerate frowned slightly. Why? Yi Xian smiled. Because with my current strength, I'll be able to take 3 of her attacks at most. After that, I'll definitely lose. Everyone's expressions froze once more. At this moment, Xiao Ta was slightly infuriated. Damn it! This young master really isn't human when he's putting on an act. He's even better at putting on an act than our master. 3 attacks? This fellow clearly can't even take a single attack. 3 attacks. How shameless does he have to be to say something like that? Meanwhile, the Origin Venerate spoke in a low voice. With Venerate Ye's ability, you can only take 3 attacks? Yi Xian nodded. I can only take 3 attacks. If I go all out, I should be able to take around 5 attacks. The Origin Venerate's expression froze. The surroundings suddenly fell silent. Everyone had witnessed Yi Xian's strength. He could only take 5 attacks if he went all out, so how terrifying was this mysterious expert's strength? It was unimaginable. No one doubted Yi Xian's words. After all, Yi Xian was an inactivity realm expert, so he probably disdained lying. Meanwhile, Yi Xian said, "Actually, as far as I know, there are 2 more experts who can fight my younger sister." 2 more. Everyone looked at Yi Xian, and the Origin Venerate spoke in a low voice. "There are others who have surpassed the inactivity realm?" Yi Xian nodded. The Origin Venerate hesitated for a moment, and then he asked, "Who?" Everyone stared fixedly at Yi Xian with extreme curiosity. Yi Xian smiled, "My father." Everyone was speechless. Chapter 2006. Your father? The expressions of everyone here became extremely strange when they heard this. The Origin Venerable hesitated for a moment and said, "Venerable Yi, you mean that your father is as strong as the person who created this sword?" Yi Xian smiled, "Yes." The Origin Venerable glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian suddenly activated his bloodline energy. Bang! The formidable bloodline energy caused the expressions of everyone here to change. Yi Xian smiled, "That's my father's bloodline." All of them were speechless. The surroundings fell into silence once more. A second-generation genius. Damn it! They finally understood. This fellow was a proper second-generation genius. Moreover, he wasn't just an ordinary second-generation genius, he was a strong second-generation genius. Most importantly, this fellow was at the inaction realm as well. Meanwhile, the Origin Venerable couldn't help but ask, "Venerable Yi, didn't you say that 2 people can compare to the person who created this sword? Where's the other one?" Yi Xian smiled, "My sworn big brother." Everyone's expressions froze once more. The corners of the Origin Venerable's mouth twitched. Damn it! What a stupid mouth. What's the point of asking so many questions? All of them continued forward, but the atmosphere had become slightly strange. Actually, they were still shocked. They didn't think that Yi Xian was lying because the space-time Dao contained within the sword in Yi Xian's hand had truly exceeded their understanding. What did that mean? It meant that the strength of the person who created this sword was definitely above the inaction realm. There was also Yi Xian's bloodline power. His bloodline power was not normal at first glance. It was abnormally powerful. Needless to say, all of them had quite complicated emotions. They'd thought that they were the strongest experts in this world, but now, they noticed that there was someone even stronger than them. As the old saying goes, there is no such thing as the strongest, there is only stronger. Right at this moment, all of them suddenly turned around. An old man was walking over swiftly with a young man by his side. Dao Ling was slightly stunned when she saw this person. Yi Xian asked, "You don't know him?" Dao Ling smiled. "Yes, but not that close. That old man is also an inaction realm martial artist. His name is Ian Paragon, and as his name suggests, he's not a very good person. That's why I didn't invite him this time. I didn't expect that he would come on his own." Venerable Ian brought the young man to the front of the crowd. He cupped his fists and smiled, "Everyone, I came uninvited. I hope you don't not welcome me?" Dao Ling smiled. "Why would I? One more person means one more strength." Venerable Ian looked at Dao Ling and said with a smile, "Venerable Spirit, you invited so many people but didn't invite me. Are you looking down on me?" Dao Ling laughed. "Venerable Ian, you come and go like a ghost, I can't find you even if I wanted to." Reverend Ian smiled. "So it was like this. I thought the spiritual venerable was looking down on me." The Yuan venerables and the others frowned when they heard Senior Yin's words. Was this old man retarded? He still dared to target Dao Ling at this time. Didn't he see that Dao Ling Palace had 3 inaction realm martial artists? At this time, the Yuan Venerable suddenly said, "Venerable Ian, have you been in seclusion during this period?" Venerable Ian smiled. "I had some enlightenment previously, so I have been in seclusion all this time." "What, did something big happen in the alternate world?" The Yuan Venerable looked at Venerable Ian strangely. At this time, Bashan suddenly looked at the young man beside Venerable Ian. Venerable Yin, is this your disciple? Everyone looked at the young man. The young man wasn't at the inaction realm. Venerable Yin smiled. This is my disciple, Xiao Yan. Please take care of him. Hearing this, everyone's brows furrowed. The Yuan Venerable said in a low voice, Venerable Yin, you should know how dangerous this place is. Aren't you afraid of an accident bringing him along? Venerable Yin smiled. What's there to be afraid of? Young people should come out to explore and see the world, right? Everyone was speechless. Meanwhile, Venerable Yin suddenly glanced at Yixian. Others aren't afraid, so how could my disciple be afraid? Everyone saw Lord Yin's gaze. At that moment, everyone's expression turned strange. Damn it! Can your disciple compare to young Master Yi? He's already killed 2 inaction realm experts. Moreover, there are 3 extraordinary big shots behind him. The Yuan Venerable glanced at Venerable Yin, and he instinctively moved to the side. His intuition told him that something would happen to this fellow, and it was better to stay away from him. Staying away from idiots was the way to survive. Meanwhile, Dao Ling glanced at Venerable Yin and said, Let's go. Let's get down to business first. Everyone nodded. Now wasn't the time to get into a conflict. They continued forward. On the way, Yixian glanced at his surroundings. He noticed that this place was quite strange, and the further they went, the more uneasy he felt. After all, with his current strength, anything that could make him feel uneasy was definitely not simple. Meanwhile, Dao Ling suddenly said, Be careful. If you feel that something's wrong, then flee. Understand? Yixian nodded. He naturally wouldn't put on a brave front. Before long, they arrived at the side of a cliff. When Yixian stood at the edge of the cliff and looked down, he was shocked. A dense expanse of tombs. The entire cliff was covered in tombs, tombs that stretched as far as the eye could see. Yixian said in a low voice, Big Sister Ling this. Dao Ling smiled and said, You're shocked, right? Yixian nodded. Dao Ling said softly, It's my first time here, and I'm just like you. I'm filled with shock. As she spoke, she looked down at some tombs. Many experts have died here in the past, but I don't know why they died. There are no records. Yixian said in a low voice, There are too many unknowns in this world. Dao Ling smiled and said, Yes. As she spoke, she leaped down. Everyone followed suit. When they reached the bottom, Yixian saw a dilapidated stone tablet. There were 4 big words on the stone tablet, Heavenly Tune Grounds. Everyone continued forward. Yixian suddenly asked, Big Sister Ling, have you excavated these tombs before? Dao Ling smiled and said, Of course. Yixian was a little curious. Are there corpses inside? Dao Ling's expression became a little solemn. Not corpses. Yixian frowned slightly. At this moment, Dao Ling said again, They're living people. Yixian was stunned. Dao Ling said softly, Those lying inside are all alive and breathing. However, they seem to be under some spell and can't be awakened. Even with our strength, we can't awaken them. Yixian said in a low voice, It's so strange. Dao Ling nodded. This place is very strange. As she spoke, she paused and said, There was once an inanimate realm expert who died here. The cause of death is unknown. Yixian was about to speak when he realized that everyone's expressions had become solemn. Yixian raised his head and looked into the distance. Not far away, there was a grave. This grave was different from the others. First of all, it was different in size. This grave was about twice the size of the others. Other than that, this grave was blood-red in color, as if it was made of fresh blood. Dao Ling said in a low voice, A bloody grave. When you encounter this kind of grave, you must be extremely careful. Don't get close, because there is dead spirit aura inside that can kill inanimate realm experts. Yixian glanced at the bloody grave. Indeed, this bloody grave made him feel a little uneasy. As if thinking of something, Yixian asked, What about the infinite divine crystal? Dao Ling suddenly stopped and looked into the distance. Yixian followed her gaze and saw a black vortex not far away. Dao Ling said in a low voice, The infinite divine crystal is obtained from this kind of black vortex, and there are many of these black vortexes in this heavenly tomb. But not long ago, there were fewer and fewer of them. Not only that, but there are also no infinite divine crystals in some black vortexes. As she spoke, she looked at Yixian. This time we're going to go deeper. We're going to go deeper into the place that we thought was dangerous and see what happened. Yixian looked into the distance. In front. Dao Ling nodded. Everyone continued forward. At this time, everyone's expressions had become very solemn. They were all inanimate realm experts, but inanimate realm did not mean invincible. After walking for a short while, they stopped once more. In front of them was a black river. On the other side of the river was a black forest. Dao Ling said softly, "We've never crossed this river before." Yixian asked, "Why?" Dao Ling was about to speak when Venerable Yin suddenly laughed. "Venerable Spirit, I think the person you brought is too talkative." Hearing this, everyone looked at Venerable Yin. The source Venerable subconsciously retreated to the side. Damn, how did this idiot get to the inanimate realm? Even if you can't sense Yixian's realm, you should at least be able to see some clues from Dao Ling's attitude toward Yixian. Does this old fellow cultivate without training his brain? Dao Ling looked at Venerable Yin. "Do you have any questions?" Venerable Yin smiled and said, "Venerable Spirit, I feel that the person you brought is very unruly. Along the way, he has the most questions, asking nonstop. Young man, if you aren't strong enough, you should just watch and learn. There are so many seniors here, so when is it your turn to speak?" As he spoke, he looked at the source Venerable and the others. "Everyone, do you think I'm right?" The source Venerable hurriedly shook his head. "Venerable Yin, don't bring me along. I'm not very familiar with you." "Thank you." As he spoke, he walked to the side. "Damn, this idiot wants to bring me along? Too scary." Jun Daolin and the others also moved to the side. It's better to stay away from this kind of brainless person who likes to seek attention. Seeing the attitude of the source Venerable and the others, Venerable Yin frowned. At this moment, he felt that something was wrong. Yixian looked at Venerable Yin and smiled. "Venerable Yin, I'm asking my sister Ling, not you, right?" Venerable Yin looked at Yixian. "Don't you think you're a bit talkative? You've been chattering nonstop along the way." Yixian blinked. "What does it have to do with you?" Hearing this, Venerable Yin narrowed her eyes. "Venerable Spirit, is this junior of yours so ill-mannered? If you don't care, I don't mind teaching him a lesson for you." Everyone, at this moment, the man beside Venerable Yin, Xiaoyan, suddenly smiled. "Master, how is he worth your time?" As he spoke, he looked at Yixian. "Brother, why don't we spar for a bit?" Yixian said in a low voice, "You're at the half-step indestructible realm, while I'm only at the indestructible realm. This isn't fair. Unless you lower yourself to the indestructible realm." Hearing this, the source Venerable and the others looked at Yixian, their faces full of shock. Damn, is this something a human would say? Chapter 2007. You're at the Nirvana realm, yet you want others to lower their cultivation? That's inhumane. Meanwhile, Xiaoyan suddenly smiled. "No problem." As soon as he finished speaking, he started lowering his cultivation to the Daoless realm, and then he gazed at Yixian. "Bring it on." Yixian nodded and was about to speak. However, Xiaoyan suddenly vanished on the spot, and his fist shot towards Yixian's face. He who attacked first had the advantage. Countless life and death experiences had allowed him to understand that one should never waste one's breath in battle. A single word of nonsense might cost one his life. He'd grasped the moment Yixian was about to speak. He knew that Yixian would absolutely not know that he would attack right away. Xiaoyan had put all his strength into this punch. His objective was very simple. He wanted to kill Yixian with a single strike and not give Yixian any chance. Right when his fist arrived before Yixian's face, Yixian's expression was extraordinarily calm, and he showed no intention of attacking. Xiaoyan instantly felt panic in his heart when he witnessed this scene. His intuition told him that something was off, but he had no path of retreat at this moment. A wisp of viciousness flashed through Xiaoyan's eyes, and the profound energy within his body surged madly as he fought with all his might. Right when his fist was about to smash against the center of Yi Xian's forehead, his figure suddenly stopped moving. Xiao Yan was slightly stunned. What's going on? Why did I stop? In the next moment, his pupils constricted, and he swiftly grabbed his throat with both hands while a strand of blood sprayed from between his fingers. Instant kill. How dare you? Right at this moment, Lord Yin was suddenly enraged, and she vanished on the spot. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he raised his sword and slashed down. Bang! Lord Yin was blasted 3 kilometers away by Yi Xian's attack. After Lord Yin stopped moving, she gazed at Yi Xian with disbelief. Nirvana realm. Yi Xian glanced at Lord Yin. Are you surprised? Lord Yin's expression was slightly unsightly. You're actually at the Nirvana realm. Yi Xian suddenly opened his right hand and the green profound sword flew out. In the distance, Lord Yin's eyes narrowed, and a metal staff suddenly appeared in his hand. In the next moment, he smashed it forward. Boom! The sword light shattered, but Lord Yin retreated explosively for another 3 kilometers. Moreover, the iron staff in her hand was directly slashed into 2 by Yi Xian's sword strike. Seeing this scene, Venerable Yin's expression instantly turned ugly. Boundless swordsman. Since when did another boundless swordsman appear in this alternate world? At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the distance, suddenly disappeared. A ray of sword light tore through the battlefield. Lord Yin squinted her eyes. She rushed forward and punched out. On her fist, the shadow of a beast suddenly appeared. Boom! That punch actually blocked Yi Xian's sword by force. Moreover, it even shattered Yi Xian's sword light. In the distance, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his grasp. He gazed at Lord Yin. Lord Yin spoke in a low voice. Since you're in the boundless realm, then why did you kill my disciple? Aren't you bullying the weak? The strong bullying the weak. Yi Xian smiled. Geezer, it seems like you and your disciple came looking for trouble with me first, right? Lord Yin spoke angrily. How does old man know that you're in the boundless realm? Yi Xian smiled. I understand. If I'm in the boundless realm, then don't bully me. If I'm not, then I deserve to be bullied, right? Lord Yin stared at Yi Xian. You're clearly in the boundless realm, yet you're pretending to be in the Daoist realm. Your intentions are truly evil. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he smiled. Geezer, it was clearly you who acted against me for no reason, yet you're blaming me now? Lord Yin spoke angrily. If you revealed your identity, then would the old man act against you? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, You really are a fucking genius. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. A blood-red ray of light tore through the surroundings. A wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Lord Yin's eyes. Do you think the old man is afraid of you? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stomped his right foot against the ground, and his figure leaned forward as he roared furiously, Fuck off! Bang! An illusory image of a beast suddenly appeared behind Lord Yin, and then it roared furiously. Bang! The space in the surroundings trembled violently, and it rippled like water. However, it didn't shatter. Rumble! Yi Xian's attack was blocked once more, but countless rays of light instantly drowned Lord Yin. Numerous ripping sounds suddenly resounded, and then everyone watched as Lord Yin retreated explosively for over 1 kilometer. He just stopped when countless strands of fresh blood sprayed violently from his body. At this moment, Lord Yin's entire body was covered in scars. As for Yi Xian, he wasn't harmed at all. The expressions of the Yuan Venerables and the others became solemn once more when they witnessed this scene. Yi Xian's combat strength was truly formidable. In the distance, Lord Yin wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth and gazed at Yi Xian. Do you really intend to fight to the death? Yi Xian smiled and said, It seems like you were the one who looked for trouble first, right? Lord Yin said furiously, The old man merely said a few words to you, yet you intend to kill the old man? Are you even human? Yi Xian, everyone else, Lord Yin continued, if I said a few words to you and offended you, Then can't the old man apologize to you? As he spoke, he cupped his fists and said, Lord Yi, what I said just now was slightly troublesome. I hope that you can be magnanimous and forgive me. Everyone's expressions became strange. This fellow really knows when to yield and when to stand tall. Yi Xian was slightly speechless as well. He hadn't expected that this fellow would directly apologize. Meanwhile, the Yuan venerables and the others gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, I don't mind. It was just a misunderstanding, so why would I mind? Lord Yin, I was a little heavy-handed just now. Don't take it to heart. Lord Yin glanced at Yi Xian and said, I won't. Yi Xian smiled and said, I hope we'll be able to cooperate well in the future. After all, the boundless divine crystal is our true objective. Lord Yin, you must think of the bigger picture. Don't launch sneak attacks. Jun Daolin nodded slightly. Think of the bigger picture. The other inaction realm experts nodded successively as well. Actually, they were afraid that Yi Xian would continue to kill Lord Yin. If that was the case, they would be on guard against Yi Xian. After all, as Lord Yin had said, even though Lord Yin had offended Yi Xian, it wasn't to the extent of killing him. Of course, Lord Yin's brain wasn't very good. She had cultivated for so many years, yet she didn't train her brain. Meanwhile, Lord Yin spoke solemnly, What are you talking about, Lord Yi? Even though I, Lord Yin, have a bad temper, I still see the bigger picture. Yi Xian smiled and said, Then let's continue forward. Everyone continued forward. Dao Ling, who stood by Yi Xian's side, smiled and said, I'm slightly surprised. Yi Xian smiled lightly. Surprised that I didn't kill him? Dao Ling nodded. Yi Xian glanced at Lord Yin in the distance. If he could kill him, he would definitely kill him. He wouldn't leave any future trouble for himself. But the problem was that he'd lost the best opportunity to kill him. Without activating his bloodline, it would still be difficult for him to kill an inaction realm expert. Moreover, Lord Yin was preparing to flee just now. Once he fled, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. After all, he was an inaction realm cultivator. Moreover, Lord Yin had already apologized. If he still wanted to kill him, Jun Daolin and the other inaction realm experts would be wary of him. It was definitely better to have a few more friends than a few more enemies. Dao Ling suddenly said, Be careful when crossing the river. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at the black river in front of him. Is there something fishy at the bottom of the river? Dao Ling nodded and said, There's an unknown creature. I don't know what it is exactly. Yi Xian said, This river is less than 1,000 feet wide. With everyone's strength, we can cross it in the blink of an eye. At this point, he said solemnly, There's something wrong with the sky above the river? Dao Ling nodded and said, The space-time above the Black River is very strange. It's a distorted space-time like a maze. This is also why we didn't cross the river in the past. That space-time is too strange. After entering it, we don't have the confidence to walk out or return. Space-time. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. What is it that I'm least afraid of? All sorts of space-time. Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian and said, I know your sword is slightly special. Can you take the lead? Take the lead. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, No problem. As he spoke, he took a step forward. The space-time beneath his feet rippled, and in the next moment, an unknown starry sky domain appeared before him. At this moment, Dao Ling and others also showed up behind him. Yi Xian took a look in front of him. In front of him, there were countless space-time tunnels. Not only that, but these space-time tunnels also reflected countless people like mirrors. It's strange. Yi Xian furrowed his brows and looked around. In the end, he opened his palm, and the Qingxian sword trembled slightly. He slowly closed his eyes, and a moment later, he looked into the distance. Follow me. As he spoke, he walked towards one of the space-time tunnels. However, as soon as he walked over, the space-time there started to distort. Their expressions changed drastically. Yi Xian suddenly said, Suppress. As soon as he finished speaking, the azure sword in his hand trembled slightly. In the next moment, the warped space-time returned to normal. Everyone instantly heaved sighs of relief when they witnessed this scene. They continued forward. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. 6 men with spears in their hands had suddenly appeared not too far away from him. All of them were naked from the waist up, and their bodies were covered in all sorts of blood-red talisman markings. 6 of them were still alive. Behind the 6 of them was an altar. A woman was lying on the altar. She wore a black dress, and her face was covered with a blood-red veil. The expressions of Yi Xian and the others became solemn when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, the azure sword trembled slightly. At the same time, Soul's voice resounded in Yi Xian's mind, "Young master, retreat. Retreat." Her voice carried a trace of terror. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically, and he immediately said, "Retreat." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to retreat. However, at this moment, the 6 spear-wielding men suddenly vanished on the spot. Yi Xian's pupils constricted. With a command in his heart, the azure sword transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. An ancient spear stabbed towards him. Bang! The sword shield trembled violently, and Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment he swiftly turned his head. As soon as he turned his head, he saw the head of the Source Venerable on his right fly into the air. It wasn't just the Source Venerable, but the heads of Jun Daolin and Beishan, Dao Ling, and the others had flown into the air as well. Besides him, everyone else here had been instantly killed. All of them had been instantly killed. Yi Xian's face instantly turned pale. He didn't even have the ability to fight back. Meanwhile, the 6 men with spears turned to look at Yi Xian, and one of them was about to attack when a voice resounded from the altar. "Wait!" The man immediately stopped when he heard this. The 6 of them slowly turned to look at the woman on the altar in the distance, and then they knelt in unison with their heads on the ground. They first looked at the woman who had walked down from the altar. The woman's face was covered by a blood-red veil, so their formation couldn't be seen. The woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's pupils constricted, and with a command in his heart, the azure sword transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. At this moment, the woman pressed her fingers together and pointed at the sword shield. In the next moment, bang! The sword shield shattered and transformed into fragments that filled the sky. Yi Xian's mind went blank. The azure sword had shattered. Chapter 2008. The green profound sword was gone. At this moment, Yi Xian was completely stunned. The green profound sword was forged by Qing. All along the way, the green profound sword had been practically invincible. Yet now, it had been shattered by a single tap from this woman. Damn it! I'm in big trouble. What should I do? At this moment, Yi Xian was truly at a loss. At this moment, he suddenly realized that everything else was useless before absolute strength. Meanwhile, the woman in a black dress suddenly walked over to Yi Xian. She was very close, but Yi Xian still couldn't see her appearance. Yi Xian spoke in his heart, "Xiaota, aren't you going to say something?" Xiaota fell silent for a moment before he said, "Young master, I'm very panicked right now as well. Can you say something to comfort me?" Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the woman in a black dress spoke abruptly, "You're very interesting." Yi Xian gazed at her and hesitated for a moment before he asked, "What do you mean?" She said, "When they wanted to kill you earlier, a trace of uneasiness actually appeared in the depths of my heart. Moreover, when I aroused killing intent towards you just now, that trace of uneasiness actually grew stronger." As she spoke, she slowly placed her right hand on Yi Xian's shoulder. "Will I die if I kill you? Answer me." Yi Xian fell silent. Damn it. That's a suicidal question. Will it? If I say that, then this woman might just slap me to death. After all, peerless experts like her are extremely proud and confident. Sometimes, they like to act in the opposite way. Won't it? If that's the case, then I might die even faster. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Do you want to kill me?" The woman nodded. "Both of you came uninvited and disturbed me." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Will it be too late for me to apologize now?" The woman shook her head. Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. In the next moment, the fragments of the green profound sword suddenly converged towards his palm, and then the green profound sword condensed into form once more. Seeing this scene, even Yi Xian himself was stunned. He didn't expect it to work. He had only wanted to give it a try, but he had not expected that the shattered green profound sword could be reformed in such a manner. Yi Xian passed the green profound sword to the black-dressed lady in front of him. Through this sword, you can sense the owner of the sword. You can ask her your question just now. She will give you the answer. The black-robed woman's right hand slowly slid down Yi Xian's shoulder. Finally, she took the green profound sword and lowered her head to look at the sword in her hand. After a brief moment, she chuckled. I'm quite surprised that there's someone out there who can combine time and space-time so perfectly. No wonder you were able to use this sword to enter the space-time formation that I've set up. Interesting. Yi Xian said nothing. The black-dressed woman glanced at Yi Xian. For the sake of the person who made this sword, I won't kill you. However, I need your help. Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it, this woman actually didn't try to sense the Qing air. How am I supposed to deal with this? The black-dressed woman suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand with her right hand and pulled him toward the altar. Yi Xian asked in a low voice, Xiao Ta, can you sense my dad? Xiao Ta was silent for a moment. Young master, don't talk to me. She can hear us. Yi Xian looked at the black-dressed woman. The black-dressed woman said, It's right. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. Xiao Ta, did I stay invincible for more than 3 days? Xiao Ta said, It's been more than 3 days. Be content. Yi Xian. At this time, the black-dressed woman had already pulled Yi Xian to the altar. Yi Xian glanced at the black-dressed woman. He wanted to slip away, but he knew that he couldn't. This woman's strength was too terrifying. It wasn't just her. Even the 6 men standing below were terrifying. They had definitely surpassed the invincible realm. What kind of people were they? Questions arose in Yi Xian's heart. At this time, the black-dressed woman turned to Yi Xian. Help me a little. Yi Xian's face darkened. You're not going to sacrifice me, are you? The black-dressed woman smiled. More or less. Yi Xian. At this time, Yi Xian felt a pain in his palm. The next moment, a spurt of blood shot out of his hand and onto the altar. Boom. In an instant, the entire altar shook violently. The black-dressed woman suddenly said softly, I never thought that your blood could also activate. Young man, I'm even more interested in your background. Yi Xian looked at the black-dressed woman and said nothing. At this time, the black-dressed woman let go of Yi Xian's hand and pressed her palm down on the altar. Boom. The altar suddenly shook violently. Gradually, the entire area beneath the altar started to shake as if there was an earthquake. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. Something's about to come out. Meanwhile, the altar suddenly split open, and then a colossus charged out. Yi Xian looked up and saw a huge ape in the sky. The ape was as large as a hill. Its limbs were like pillars, and its entire body was covered in sharp black and gold scales. However, Yi Xian noticed that the ape didn't have eyes. Instead, its eyes were 2 bloody holes. In the sky, the ape suddenly roared and pounded its chest incessantly. The powerful force it exerted caused the heavens and the earth to tremble. Its roar carried boundless viciousness. Yi Xian glanced at the ape. He had no doubt that it had been beaten in the past. Not only had it been beaten, but it had even been sealed. Meanwhile, the ape seemed to have thought of something. It suddenly lowered its head to look at the black-dressed woman, and then it slowly knelt down on one knee. The woman grinned. Qi Yuan, don't be angry and don't be sad as well. We'll make them pay 100-fold for what they owe us. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and waved her right hand. In an instant, the spatial formation in the surroundings vanished. She looked down at the boundless tombs below her, and then she slowly closed her eyes. After a short moment, she spoke softly, Time's up. Awaken. As soon as she finished speaking, the tombs below her suddenly started trembling, and then countless people gradually crawled out from within them. Yi Xian's expression became solemn when he witnessed this scene. It didn't take long for more and more people to crawl out of their tombs. In the end, they just crawled and knelt down before the woman in a black dress, and then they just lay there. Yi Xian looked down. There were at least a few hundreds of thousands of people down there, and all of them possessed extremely formidable auras. Especially those who'd crawled out of the tombs. The weakest amongst them was at the inaction realm, and there were at least 10,000 of them. Over 10,000. What sort of notion was that? Yi Xian was shocked. Exactly what sort of power is this? Why was it sealed here? Meanwhile, the woman suddenly smiled. Let's fight again. Let's fight again. Let's fight again. Let's fight again. Countless experts suddenly roared furiously, and their voices were like thunder that shook the heavens and the earth. The woman in a black dress suddenly opened her palm, and a white bone spear appeared in her hand. In the next moment, she opened her red lips. Break! The bone spear suddenly turned into a white light that shot into the sky. As countless people watched, the distant sky split open, and in the next moment, a white light poured down. Yi Xian glanced around. At this moment, the blood of the people around him was boiling. He wanted to flee. Just as he was about to flee, the woman in a black dress suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, the woman in a black dress slowly walked up to Yi Xian and smiled. You can't leave. Yi Xian said in a low voice. What are you going to do? The woman in a black dress glanced around and smiled. I think you must be very curious about this world, right? Yi Xian glanced at the woman in a black dress, but did not say anything. The woman in a black dress said softly, this world is actually called the Banished Land, and we are those who have been banished. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that his days of invincibility were gone forever. The woman in a black dress walked up to Yi Xian, and suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand, and smiled. You are the best gift that the heavens have given me. From now on, you will stay by my side and don't go anywhere. Her voice was soft like a lover's whisper, but Yi Xian's hair stood on end. This woman wanted to use him. Was she interested in his bloodline? Yi Xian held the woman's hand. Can I make a small request? The woman in a black dress smiled. Tell me. Yi Xian said, I know that those friends of mine just now, they are not completely dead because your people did not erase them. So, can you resurrect them? The corner of the woman's mouth twitched. Why should I resurrect them? Yi Xian spread out his hands and smiled. This is a piece of cake for you. Of course, in the coming days, if you need anything, I will cooperate with you. The woman in a black dress moved closer to Yi Xian. Can you not cooperate? Yi Xian smiled. I am a swordsman. Do you think a swordsman would be afraid of death? The woman in a black dress did not speak, and Yi Xian could not see her expression, but he knew that she was looking at him. After a while, the woman in a black dress smiled. Are you going to threaten me with death? Yi Xian suddenly laughed. Everyone looked at Yi Xian. The woman in a black dress just looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled. Originally, I wanted to be flashy and see if I could fool you and then escape. But now it seems that I can't. The woman in a black dress asked, and then? Yi Xian looked at the woman in a black dress. Do you really think I'm afraid of death? Bang. The moment his voice fell, Yi Xian's blood boiled in his body. Bloodline activation. At the same time, the green profound sword in his hand turned into a sword ray and disappeared between his eyebrows. Bang. One with the sword. Rumble. The aura around Yi Xian's body surged madly. Yi Xian knew that he only had one chance to attack, and it was either life or death. The men with ancient spears next to the woman in a black dress were about to attack, but they were stopped by the woman in a black dress. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared on the spot, and his sword pierced between the woman in a black dress's eyebrows. This sword was the most powerful sword he had ever used. Just as the green profound sword was about to come into contact with the woman in a black dress, two fingers caught Yi Xian's sword. It was the woman in a black dress's fingers. The woman in a black dress exerted some force. Bang! The green profound sword shattered again. The next moment, the woman in a black dress grabbed Yi Xian's throat with her right hand, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a mocking smile. What right do you have to negotiate with me? Killing you would be as easy as crushing an ant. Is that so? At this moment, a voice resounded from the depths of the boundless starry sky. At the same time, the shattered pieces of the green profound sword suddenly gathered together and formed a sword again. The woman in a black dress suddenly looked up into the starry sky, and she could vaguely see a woman in a white dress in the distance. The woman in a white dress stood by the sea with her back facing the sea, and her long hair fluttered lightly in the sea breeze. The woman in a black dress narrowed her eyes, circle drawing. The woman in a white dress turned her head slightly, and a mocking smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. What kind of rubbish is that? P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 2009. What kind of trash is that? The woman in a black dress laughed with ridicule when she heard her. How arrogant of you! The woman in a plain dress opened her palm, and then a sword suddenly appeared in her grasp. The walk sword suddenly vanished. In the heavenly tomb, the black-dressed woman's pupils suddenly constricted because that sword had already arrived above her head. A ferocious expression flashed through her eyes, and then she suddenly raised her right hand, technique nirvana. As soon as she finished speaking, the space above her was actually obliterated at this moment. It was true obliteration. Such strength had completely surpassed space, and all techniques couldn't exist at all. The circle walker. It was a technique that she'd created herself. Everyone in the sky was looking at the sword. The countless strands of mysterious energy weren't able to stop the walk sword at all. It descended in a straight line and disregarded all force. The woman's pupils constricted when she witnessed this scene. She was just about to attack again when the walk sword arrived at the center of her forehead. The sword pierced half an inch into her forehead, causing blood to spray. In an instant her blood-red veil turned even redder. The expressions of countless experts changed drastically, and their eyes were filled with terror. The invincible ancient priest was actually unable to resist that attack? The woman in a black dress gazed at the woman in a plain dress with disbelief. Aren't the circle walker? Meanwhile, the woman in a plain dress pressed her fingers together and slid them lightly, and then the walk sword suddenly slid along with her. The blood-red veil covering her face slid off, and then a peerlessly beautiful face appeared before everyone's eyes. At the same time, two blood-red words appeared at the center of her forehead, trash. A ferocious expression instantly appeared on the woman's face when she saw those words. How dare you insult me? The woman in the plain dress suddenly slapped out. Slap. The walking sword suddenly slapped the face of the black-dressed woman. Bang. The black-robed woman's body shattered. However, that word was still between her brows. They weren't carved on her body, they were carved on her soul. Her expression was unsightly to the extreme while the clansmen around her were terrified to the extreme. They weren't able to fight back at all. His ancient priest was actually powerless in front of this woman in a plain dress. A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of the woman's mouth. Humiliate you? Trash like you, what qualifications do you have for me to insult you? As she spoke, she turned to look coldly at the woman in the black dress. Do you know why I didn't kill you? The black-dressed woman stared at the plain-dressed woman without saying a word. The woman in the plain dress suddenly slashed with her fingers. The walking sword flashed past the eyes of the strange black woman. The eyes of the black-dressed woman shattered. Everyone, the black-dressed woman clenched her fists, her face close to insanity. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Why must you humiliate me? The plain-clothed woman was expressionless. Just now, you humiliated my brother. Didn't you find it very satisfying? The black-dressed woman's expression froze. The plain-clothed woman pointed with her finger, and the walk sword suddenly flew into the sky. You want to die? It's simple. As long as you tell me now that you want to die, I'll make you and your clansmen disappear with one slash of my sword. Clan extermination. Hearing this, the black-dressed woman clenched her fists. I'm the one who humiliated your brother. What does it have to do with my clan? The plainly dressed woman raised an eyebrow. If I want to destroy them, then I'll destroy them. What, are you not convinced? If you're not convinced, then cross the starfield to fight me. The black-dressed woman. At this moment, the plain-clothed woman's right hand pressed down lightly. The walk sword suddenly descended from the heavenly tomb. Bang! In an instant, the entire space-time of the heavenly tomb started burning. At this moment, everyone's expression changed drastically. Escape? There was no way to escape. Because it wasn't just the heavenly tomb, even the entire alternate world was enveloped by the sword. When the sword descended, everyone would die. Of course, except for Yi Xian, who stood at the side. His clan was really going to be exterminated. At this moment, the black-dressed woman panicked. At this moment, she finally realized what sort of person she was facing. This was a person who was extremely indifferent to life. If the sword descended, it wouldn't just be the heavenly tomb, the entire banished land would be annihilated. No one could stop this sword. At this moment, the plain-clothed woman suddenly said, "Do you want to live?" The black-dressed woman looked at the plain-clothed woman, and the plain-clothed woman looked at the distant sea. "Please, my brother. If he says you can live, then you and your clansmen can live. If he says you can't, then you and your clansmen must die." "Brother." The black-dressed woman looked at Yi Xian, who stood nearby. At this moment, Yi Xian was looking at the plain-clothed woman as well. "I haven't seen you in a long time," Yi Xian said softly. "Qing, where are you now?" Qing turned to look at Yi Xian, and the coldness in her eyes vanished and was replaced with a trace of tenderness. "The Milky Way." "The Milky Way." Yi Xian was stunned. Why did Qing go to the Milky Way? Qing suddenly asked, "Do you want me to annihilate them?" "As long as you nod, everyone around you, including the woman who bullied you earlier, will vanish from this world." Yi Xian fell silent. "As long as I nod, all of them will vanish." Yi Xian smiled. "Qing, you didn't kill her because you want me to take revenge one day, right?" The corner of Qing's mouth lifted. "Yes. Me helping you bully them is different from you bullying them yourself." Yi Xian smiled. "I understand." Qing nodded slightly. She opened her palm, and the Qingxian sword beside Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, the Qingxian sword was already in Qing's hand. She looked at the Qingxian sword in her hand, and a moment later, she clamped the blade of the sword between her fingers. Then she slid her fingers down, and very quickly her fingers reached the tip of the sword. The tip of the azure profound sword shattered. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He didn't understand what she meant. Qing opened up her right palm. In an instant, countless mysterious airflows converged from the surroundings, and they converged onto the green profound sword in the end. In next to no time, the tip of the green profound sword appeared once more. She had reforged the tip. Qing turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, "I've reforged this sword. In this world, there are only 4 people who can break it apart from me." As soon as he finished speaking, the Qingxian sword suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was already in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian was curious. "Qing, you said there are only 4 people who can break it apart from you. Aside from dad and brother, who are the other 2? Qing smiled. "You'll know in the future." Yi Xian was speechless. Qing suddenly said, "I want to teach a lesson to an arrogant little girl. Talk to you next time." As soon as she finished speaking, her body suddenly became illusory, and soon she completely disappeared. Gone. Yi Xian was puzzled. What was Qing doing in the Milky Way? And who was that arrogant little girl? After a moment, Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and looked at the Qingxian sword in his hand. At this moment, the Qingxian sword had been reconstructed. Not only that, but the tip of the sword had also been reforged. Moreover, it was forged by an unknown and mysterious force. The azure profound sword had been reborn. Yi Xian put away the sword and looked at the black-dressed woman in the distance. "Revive my friends." The woman in the black dress took a look at Yi Xian. This time, she did not waste any more words. She opened her palm and then clenched it gently. Soon, countless fragments of souls in the world gathered towards her. Soon, the souls of Dao Ling and the others were reassembled. Yi Xian suddenly pointed at Supremacy Yin's soul. "This isn't my friend." The black-dressed woman glanced at Yi Xian and waved her sleeve. Boom! Supremacy Yin's newly formed divine soul shattered again. This time she was directly erased. Yi Xian gazed at Dao Ling and the others. "Let's go." Dao Ling and the others glanced at the surroundings. They didn't waste their breath and immediately left with Yi Xian. On the other hand, the black-dressed woman and the others didn't stop him. Of course, they didn't dare to as well. Earlier, so long as Yi Xian nodded, then all of them would be gone. How could they dare to stop Yi Xian at a time like this? The black-dressed woman gazed at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Meanwhile, an old man walked over to the black-dressed woman's side and bowed slightly. "Ancient priest." The black-dressed woman closed her eyes slowly and clenched her fists tightly. Since she was born, she'd never suffered such humiliation. Even when she and her clansmen suffered a crushing defeat all those years ago, she'd never suffered such humiliation. She wanted to take revenge, but she felt despair when she thought of that woman. True despair. She'd thought that woman was just like her, a person who drew circles. But now it seemed like she wasn't. What realm is she at? A trace of bewilderment arose in the ancient priest's heart. This was the first time she'd seen someone so powerful that it exceeded her understanding. After a long time, the ancient priest spoke softly, "I'll heal my injuries." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked towards the altar. All the experts looked at each other in dismay. Yi Xian led the souls of everyone out of the heavenly tomb. Meanwhile, Dao Ling spoke in a low voice. "Those people just now," Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "a mysterious race. I don't know their origins either. However, that woman said that this alternate world is actually a place of exile, and they're exiles." Dao Ling frowned slightly. "Exiles?" Yi Xian nodded. "I don't know the specifics either." Dao Ling fell silent, and the others had extremely solemn expressions. Meanwhile, Bashan suddenly said, "Venerable Yi, thank you for saving us." They knew that if it wasn't for Yi Xian, they wouldn't have been able to be reborn. The source Venerate and Jun Daolin hurriedly thanked him as well. Yi Xian spoke softly, "It's a small matter." As he spoke, he glanced at everyone. If that woman isn't lying, then something big might happen in this alternate world. Because I saw that they seem to be planning a counterattack. In other words, this place will become a battlefield in the future. Everyone's expressions became solemn when they heard this. A battlefield. Once this place became a battlefield, then the alternate world would be finished. Not only would the alternate world be finished, but they might also die. For now, in-action realm experts were really not enough before these people. Yi Xian sighed softly as well. "I've only been invincible for a short period of time, yet I've become a little brother again. Damn it. I'm too unlucky." Chapter 2010. The atmosphere in the surroundings was slightly heavy. Along with the appearance of that mysterious race in the heavenly tomb, all of them who stood at the peak of the world had suddenly become juniors amongst juniors. The gap between them was truly too huge. Right at this moment, the source Venerable suddenly said, "Venerable Yi, forgive me for asking, but all of us were killed just now, but you weren't. Moreover, after we were revived, we noticed that the mysterious woman's body was gone. Does this have anything to do with you?" Everyone looked at Yi Xian when they heard this. They'd noticed this as well. Yi Xian had been fine from the beginning until the end. Moreover, the mysterious woman's body that was as strong as a god was gone as well. Something must have happened in the process. Yi Xian smiled and said, "My younger sister made a move." Everyone exchanged glances when they heard this, and the source Venerable said in a low voice, "Your younger sister destroyed the mysterious woman's body?" Yi Xian nodded. Everyone exchanged glances again, and their eyes were filled with shock. They hadn't fought the mysterious woman, but they knew how terrifying the mysterious woman's subordinates were. They didn't even have the ability to fight back when they faced those 6 people. They could imagine how terrifying the mysterious woman who was their leader was. But Yi Xian's younger sister had actually won? Not only had she won, but she'd even destroyed the other party's body. Meanwhile, Bashan sighed softly, so we're still like ants. Everyone's expressions became slightly complicated when they heard this. Right at this moment, everyone seemed to have noticed something, and they suddenly turned around. A woman in a black dress was standing not too far away. It was the mysterious woman. Everyone's expressions changed when they saw the mysterious woman. Yi Xian frowned slightly. This woman wouldn't want to do something to me, right? The mysterious woman gazed at Yi Xian and said, "Let's talk." The source venerables and the others hesitated for a moment when they heard the mysterious woman, and then they left silently. Dao Ling gazed at Yi Xian and said, "Be careful." As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished with Yan Bianshan. Only Yi Xian and the mysterious woman were left. Yi Xian stared at the mysterious woman. He couldn't help but admit that this mysterious woman was truly a peerless beauty. Her countenance could truly be described as peerless in the world. However, it was a pity that the word between her brows had affected her peerless beauty. It was carved by Qingya. The mysterious woman walked in front of Yi Xian. "Can you tell me about her?" Yi Xian shook his head. "There's nothing to say." The mysterious woman looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian looked him in the eye. "CK, I'm not afraid of you." The two of them looked at each other, and the atmosphere in the air suddenly became a little ambiguous, because it was a little like a couple looking at each other. Moments later, the mysterious woman retracted her gaze. "We can get to know each other again. I am Tianyan, an ancient priest of the Forsaken Heaven tribe." Yi Xian glanced at the mysterious woman and said, "All of you were exiled?" Tianyan nodded. "During the battle in the Buzhou realm, my Forsaken Heaven tribe was defeated, so we were exiled here." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "Who defeated you?" Tianyan said indifferently, "The Myriad tribe." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "A tribe?" Tianyan glanced at Yi Xian. 10,000. Yi Xian said, "You were ganged up on?" Disdain flashed through Tianyan's eyes. "If they hadn't ganged up on us, how could they have defeated my Forsaken Heaven tribe?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "Where did you come from?" Tianyan said, "The center of the universe, the Eternity Realm." Eternity Realm. Yi Xian fell silent. A new map had been opened. He knew that Boundless Realm was about to become his real little brother. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. How long more did he have to work to become like Qing'er and his father? No matter what world it was, no matter how the map changed, they could still destroy it with a single strike of their sword. How long more? Yi Xian felt a little helpless. At this time, Tianyan said, "What's wrong with you?" Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. "Every time, I feel like I'm invincible. But not long after, I became a little brother again. When I was in the lower bound, I felt that this alternate world might be the end. I didn't expect this Eternity Realm to appear." Tianyan frowned slightly. "Why do you think this alternate world is the end of the universe?" Yi Xian looked at Tianyan. Tianyan said, "Even where we are, we don't think that the place we are in is the end of the universe." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Tianyan glanced at Yi Xian. "Do you know what the universe represents?" Yi Xian shook his head. Tianyan said, "The universe represents the unknown, and it also represents the endless." Yi Xian was silent. At this time, Xiao suddenly said, "Young master, some of your thoughts are not good. Just like the people in the Milky Way. I used to stay there. They always think that the small ball they live in is the only one in the universe that has life. But in reality? They are too weak to discover the world outside the Milky Way. When you think you've reached the end of the universe, it's actually because you're too weak to discover a bigger world." Yi Xian's expression was a little strange. "Xiao, you are a little knowledgeable." Xiao was a little unhappy. "So I am an idiot in your eyes, young master?" Yi Xian nodded honestly. "Xiao." At this time, Tianyan suddenly said, "Let's make a deal." Yi Xian looked at Tianyan. "What deal?" Tianyan pointed at his forehead. "Help me get rid of this word, and I will help you improve. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Get rid of it? Tianyan nodded. Yi Xian shook his head. This is Qing Er's doing. I might not be able to get rid of it. Tianyan looked at Yi Xian. There is a powerful mysterious power in these two words. I dare not touch this power, but you dare. Because my intuition tells me that this power will not harm you. Yi Xian thought about it and then said, How much can you help me improve? A circle drawing person? Tianyan's mouth twitched. You haven't even broken the circle and you want to draw circles? Yi Xian, Tianyan continued, I can help you become a circle-breaking person. But to become a circle-drawing person, it all depends on your luck. Even where I come from, there are no more than 5 circle-drawing people. Yi Xian frowned slightly. So few? Tianyan nodded. Very few. To be able to draw circles means you have to jump out of all the rules. You also have to create your own Dharma rules. Only then can you be considered a circle-drawing person. Then she glanced at Yi Xian. So, I'm very curious about that sister of yours. What realm is she at? Yi Xian smiled. I don't know her real realm either. But one of my sisters told me that Qing Er is the type of person who draws circles and breaks them. Then she keeps drawing circles and breaking them again. So on and so forth. She thinks of herself as an opponent. Circle, break, circle. Tianyan squinted. After a while, she said softly, So that's how it is. Hearing that, Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. Damn it. Did this woman realize something? Then Tianyan looked at Yi Xian. I think I get it now. But I don't think she's as simple as you say. For example, she was able to traverse countless galaxies to kill me, but I couldn't sense where she was at all. She's not that simple. Yi Xian glanced at Tianyan and sighed softly in his heart. Strength. The reason she's talking to me so nicely is all because of Qing. Alas. Yi Xian sighed again. Looks like I have to return to Pine Prefecture to regain my confidence. Meanwhile, Tianyan suddenly said, What do you think about the deal I mentioned? Yi Xian gazed at the word between Tianyan's brows and shook his head. I don't believe you. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Tianyan frowned slightly when he heard that. At this moment, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the field. Yi Xian turned his head to look. Not far away, a tall giant ape was staring at him. It was the huge ape that Tianyan had released from the altar. The huge ape didn't have any pupils, so it just stared at Yi Xian in a horrifying manner. Yi Xian smiled and said, What? Do you intend to eat me? The huge ape suddenly pounded its chest with its palms and roared furiously. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and walked over to Tianyan. He pointed at the huge ape and said, Make it vanish from my sight in 3 breaths of time. If it's still here in 3 breaths of time, then I'll make your entire forsaken race vanish from this world. Tianyan's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this, and he slowly clenched his right fist. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Time's up. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm. The green profound sword appeared in his grasp. In the next moment, it started to tremble violently. Tianyan's expression changed drastically when she witnessed this scene, and she hurriedly turned around and glared angrily at the huge ape. Fuck off. Fuck off. The huge ape was stunned, and then it turned around and leaped up into the sky and vanished into the horizon. Tianyan gazed at Yi Xian. You're using her to threaten me. That's an act of incompetence. Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Tianyan's hand and said, Miss Tianyan, I wanted to work together with you in the heavenly tomb because I was weak. I knew my limits, and I had to work together with you if I wanted to live. However, you disdained to do so. I'm afraid of death, but I refuse to live in servitude. So, I chose to shed all pretenses of cordiality with you. I knew that I would definitely lose, but I still chose to do so because I wanted to die with dignity. Unfortunately, he grinned as he spoke, unfortunately I can't die. Because I have a younger sister. Miss Tianyan, tell me, what else can I do when facing an expert like you but call for help? Tianyan gazed at Yi Xian and remained silent. Yi Xian continued, I've come from a small place until now, and I've thought it through. I'll walk my own path in the future if I can. If I really can't, I don't mind asking my sister to give me a push. Staring at Yi Xian, Heaven Hater said, have you ever thought about one thing? What if your sister is gone one day? If one day your sister is gone, Yi Xian said, then I'll go find my dad. He smiled as he spoke. My dad and Qing are evenly matched. He turned and left, but he stopped after a few steps. I forgot. I have a sworn brother called Unfettered One. He's the one who says he's invincible. He's been seeking defeat his whole life. If you're bored, you can shout to the endless starry sky, I'm invincible. Maybe he'll come find you. He continued to walk into the distance as he spoke. Tianyan looked at Yi Xian. Do you want to be the king of reliance? Yi Xian. P.S. There are a few days every month when I don't feel like writing. I want to have fun every day. I want to have a holiday. I want to have fun. Chapter 2011. Yi Xian ignored Heaven's loathsome and disappeared into the distance. On the spot, Heaven's loathsome's expression turned ugly. The deal had failed. It had to be said that she felt wronged at the moment. With her current strength, it would be too easy to kill Yi Xian. But the problem was, could she kill him? Could she kill him? Did she dare to kill him? A moment later, Heaven's loathsome turned to leave. In the distance, Xiaota suddenly said, Young master, why didn't you agree to her request? Yi Xian smiled. I don't like her. Xiaota said, I don't like her either. Young master, great minds think alike. Yi Xian was speechless. After returning to Dao Ling Palace, Yi Xian entered Xiaota's body. Cultivate. Break the circle. He had to break the circle. Only then could he use the power of his bloodline and the green profound sword to fight against Heaven's loathsome. But how could he break the circle? Sister Nian didn't tell him, and neither did Qing. Thinking of this, Yi Xian couldn't help but wonder. Xiaota, why don't Sister Nian and Qing teach me how to break the circle? Tiny Pagoda fell silent for a moment before it said, Young master, Big Sister Tianming and Big Sister Nian broke through the circle on their own, and they definitely subconsciously think that you can do the same. But it's very obvious that they've overestimated you. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiaota said, Young master, can you break the circle on your own? Yi Xian said calmly, Isn't it just breaking the circle? Just you wait, I'll break it for you. As he spoke, he turned to the peak of a mountain. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. He looked down. From this position, he could see the countless mountains below. Yi Xian was silent in thought. Break the circle. If he wanted to break out of the circle, he had to first understand what the circle was that trapped him. What was the circle that trapped him? Yi Xian was deep in thought. The heavenly tomb. Heaven Loathsome sat cross-legged on the sacrificial altar. At the moment, there was a purple ribbon wrapped around her forehead. The two words were really ugly. Naturally, she could not show them in front of others. Not far from Heaven Hater, Qiyuan lay quietly. Not far away, there were 6 Forsaken clan experts wielding ancient spears. A long time passed before she slowly opened her eyes. She looked up at the sky, and the spatial tunnel she'd forcefully torn open that day was still there. At this moment, a woman suddenly walked out from the space-time tunnel. The woman wore a snow-white dress and had a purple ribbon around her arm. She was as beautiful as Heaven Hater, especially her eyes. Her pupils were deep purple and looked as deep as the starry sky. Heaven's Hateful looked at the white-dressed woman. Bai Xiao, long time no see. The woman called Bai Xiao walked slowly to the altar and looked at Heaven Loathsome. This is no longer the era when the Forsaken clan was invincible. Do you understand? Heavenly Vexation smiled and said, I naturally understand. However, according to my guess, after your alliance defeated the Heavenly Forsaken clan, you must have started an internal strife, right? Bai Xiao fell silent. Heaven Loathsome smiled and said, without a strong external enemy, there would definitely be internal strife. Bai Xiao said softly, but with your appearance, we will become united again. Heaven Loathsome walked slowly to Bai Xiao. All these years, I've been thinking about a problem. What problem? That is, why the Forsaken clan lost back then. Later on, I discovered that there was a very important reason why our Tian Forsaken clan had lost. It was because we were too conceited. As she spoke, she shook her head and said, "We were really too conceited." Bai Xiao fell silent. Heaven Loathsome continued, "If we hadn't been so conceited back then, we definitely wouldn't have lost." Bai Xiao nodded slightly. "Looks like there's nothing to talk about." Heaven Loathsome smiled and said, "We will take back what the Forsaken clan once lost." Bai Xiao nodded slightly. "We will wait." With that, she turned and left. The direction she was walking in wasn't the way back, but the other way. Heaven Loathsome narrowed her eyes and slowly clenched her right hand. Bai Xiao chuckled and said, "Is there any meaning in fighting now?" Heaven Loathsome stared at Bai Xiao. "I think there is." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared on the spot. At this moment, 3 old men with mysterious staffs suddenly blocked Heaven Loathsome. Heaven Loathsome said fiercely, "Don't let her go to King Kaoshan." As soon as she finished speaking, a powerful force suddenly erupted from her body. The 3 old men in front of her were sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away. At this moment, Bai Xiao had already disappeared. A ferocious look flashed in Heaven Loathsome's eyes. Her figure trembled and she disappeared on the spot. Dao Ling Palace. Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly looked up. A woman had quietly appeared not far in front of him. It was Bai Xiao. Seeing Bai Xiao, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "You..." He had not expected that someone could force their way into Xiao Ta's body. Damn it. This Xiao Ta was too shameless. Xiao Ta. Bai Xiao looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "I'm very sorry for disturbing you." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Bai Xiao said, "I'm from the Eternity Realm. I'm the Divine Wilderness Clan's patriarch, Bai Xiao." Eternity Realm. Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. Then he asked, "Why are you looking for me?" Bai Xiao smiled. She opened her palm and an ancient ring floated in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at it. There were tens of millions of infinite divine crystals in the storage ring. Yi Xian looked at Bai Xiao and frowned. "What's the meaning of this?" Bai Xiao opened her palm and a scroll appeared in her hand. "Young Master Yi, this is an inheritance. Among it, there is an inheritance of my Divine Wilderness Clan's ancestors that broke the circle. It should be of help to you." As she spoke, she handed the scroll to Yi Xian. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Miss, what's the meaning of this?" Bai Xiao smiled. "The Heaven-Forsaken clan doesn't want to be friends with young Master Yi, but my Divine Wilderness clan does." Yi Xian. At this moment, Heaven Hater suddenly appeared in Xiao Ta. When he saw Bai Xiao, Heaven Hater's expression instantly turned gloomy. Bai Xiao smiled. "Young Master Yi, my Divine Wilderness clan doesn't have any ill intentions. We just want to form a good relationship with young Master Yi. If young Master Yi has any needs, you can tell me. As long as we can do it, my Divine Wilderness clan will definitely not refuse." Yi Xian looked at Bai Xiao. "What's your goal?" Bai Xiao smiled. "As I said just now, I just want to form a good relationship with young Master Yi." Yi Xian fell silent. Obviously, she knew of Qing Er's existence. At this moment, Heaven Hater suddenly mocked, "I never expected the Divine Wilderness clan's leader to be so good at bootlicking." Bai Xiao looked at Heaven Hater and smiled. "Ancient Priest Heaven Hater, the 2 words between your eyebrows are really pretty." Yi Xian, Heaven Hater's expression instantly turned ferocious. Bai Xiao. As soon as she finished speaking, she was about to attack. Meanwhile, Bai Xiao said, "Heaven Vexation, I can accompany you if you want to fight. However, this is young Master Ye's territory. Are you really going to fight here?" Hearing this, Heaven Hater glanced at Yi Xian and did not say a word. She was extremely annoyed. At this moment, Bai Xiao looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young Master Yi, please accept this inheritance and infinite divine crystal." Yi Xian smiled. "Miss Bai Xiao, to be honest, I don't deserve it." Bai Xiao smiled. "It's my Divine Wilderness clan's honor to be friends with young Master Yi." Yi Xian, Heaven Hater mocked her again. "Bai Xiao, when did you become so thick-skinned?" Bai Xiao glanced at Heaven Hater. The two words between your eyebrows are really pretty. Yi Xian's expression froze. This woman, heaven-hater, clenched her fists tightly. In an instant, the space-time within Xiao Ta's body boiled. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said indifferently, I was created by Sister Tianming. Touching me is equivalent to not giving Sister Tianming face. Yi Xian's face darkened. Tianming. Heaven-hater's expression was a little ugly. She knew that the Tianming the stupid pagoda was talking about was the plain-dressed woman. The plain-dressed woman. A sense of helplessness arose in Heaven-hater's heart when she thought of that woman. Since she was born, this was the first time she had suffered such humiliation. However, she could not arouse any thoughts of revenge in the depths of her heart. Despair. That woman was so powerful that she felt despair. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Clan leader Bai Xiao. Bai Xiao grinned. Just call me Bai Xiao. Yi Xian was speechless. Heaven-hater stared fixedly at Bai Xiao like a wolf that had been starving for half a month and had finally spotted its prey. Bai Xiao paid no attention to Heaven-hater, and she gazed at Yi Xian instead. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Miss Bai Xiao, I'll introduce my younger sister to you in the future. Bai Xiao's eyes lit up when she heard this. What a tactful young man. I like him. Is she really trying to get on Yi Xian's good side? Of course. But her true objective was actually the mysterious big shot that stood behind Yi Xian. She'd been constantly sending people to monitor this place. She'd found out about Heaven-hater being bashed up, and that was why she hadn't traversed countless stellar regions to rush over here. There was actually an extraordinary expert here that surpassed the person who drew circles. She didn't dare look for the woman in a plain dress because an expert of such a level might not even pay attention to her. Looking for Yi Xian was the most suitable choice because Yi Xian was weak and easy to rope in. Heaven-hater's expression turned even more unsightly when she heard Yi Xian. Her strength was actually greater than Bai Xiao's, and Bai Xiao wouldn't be a match for her if they were to really fight. Even though Bai Xiao was a person who'd broken circles as well, there was a difference in strength amongst them. However, if Bai Xiao really came into contact with the woman in a plain dress and obtained her guidance, then everything would be turned around, and it would be a devastating blow to the heaven-forsaken race. The killing intent in Heaven-hater's eyes suddenly calmed down when she thought up to here. Bai Xiao frowned slightly when she witnessed this scene. I've miscalculated. She knew that once she left Xiao Ta, then Heaven-hater would definitely stop at nothing to kill her. She wasn't afraid of Heaven-hater, but if Heaven-hater really stopped at nothing, then she might die. After all, this was Heaven-hater's territory. Bai Xiao glanced at Yi Xian. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to be so tactful, but his words had undoubtedly brought disaster to her. Heaven-hater suddenly glanced at Yi Xian. Kaoshun King, we'll meet again. With that, she turned and disappeared. Chapter 2012. After Heaven's Loathsome left, Yi Xian looked at Bai Xiao. Miss Bai Xiao, she might not let you leave this banished land alive. Bai Xiao smiled. It seems that I can only follow young Master Yi for the time being. Then she smiled mischievously. Young Master Yi, please don't refuse. Otherwise, I'll really be bullied by that bad woman. Yi Xian smiled. Then Miss Bai Xiao can stay in my Xiao Ta. Bai Xiao bowed slightly. Thank you. Yi Xian smiled. I'm going to cultivate. Then, he sat down cross-legged and continued to comprehend. Bai Xiao reminded him, you can use the inheritance I gave you. That way, it'll be easier for you to break the circle. Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the scroll in his hand. After a while he smiled. I want to try it myself. Try it himself. Qing, could break the circle on her own. Sister Nian could do the same. Why couldn't he? He wanted to try it himself. Sometimes, the Tao that he walked was different from the Tao of others. Previously he had been using other people's inheritance. Now he wanted to try it himself. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Bai Xiao's eyes flashed with surprise. She didn't say anything and left quietly. On the mountain peak, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and continued to comprehend. Bai Xiao didn't leave Xiao Ta. Instead, she wandered around in Xiao. It had to be said that she was shocked. With her strength, she had naturally discovered the extraordinariness of this small tower. The time inside was different from the outside world. Bai Xiao said softly, "The flow of time. This person can actually suppress the flow of time. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it." As if she thought of something, Bai Xiao left Xiaota. Outside Xiaota, she saw Heaven's Loathsome. Heaven's Loathsome didn't leave. She didn't dare to touch Yi Xian, but she didn't care about Bai Xiao. Bai Xiao looked at Heaven Vexation. "Heaven Vexation, I think you were right about one thing. You said that the Heaven-forsaken tribe lost back then because they were arrogant. However, you still haven't learned your lesson." Heaven Loathsome was expressionless. "Are you lecturing me?" Bai Xiao shook her head. "I wouldn't dare. Tianyan, as far as I know, young Master Yi wanted to work with you previously. However, you were very disdainful of him." "Why were you disdainful?" "Because you feel that he doesn't have the qualifications to cooperate with you. In other words, he doesn't deserve to negotiate with you. So, not only did you ignore him, you even humiliated him." Heaven's Loathsome suddenly interrupted him. "Don't be a hindsight. Let me ask you, if the person behind him hadn't appeared, would you have licked him?" "Really?" Bai Xiao was silent. Heaven's Hater mocked. "You're sucking up to him now because you know he has a super big shot behind him. If he didn't, would you, Bai Xiao, look at an ant who couldn't even break the circle?" Bai Xiao shook her head and smiled. "Heaven's Hater, you're wrong. Actually, you've underestimated young Master Yi." Heaven's Hater was expressionless. "Have I underestimated him? Or have you overestimated him?" Bai Xiao smiled. "Heaven's Hater, when we were at our realm, were you confident you could defeat him? Why are you using your current realm to measure his current realm? Were you really better than him when you were at his realm?" Heaven's Hater didn't speak. Bai Xiao continued, "You had a better choice. For example, you could have chosen to be friends with him. If that was the case, we would be the ones panicking. Unfortunately, you didn't do that. So, you're panicking now." Heaven's Hater glanced at Bai Xiao. "I don't dare to kill him, but the person behind him didn't want to interfere in our matter. Moreover, according to my guess, the reason why the person behind him let him stay here is to train him. In other words, as long as I don't kill him, I'll be fine. If I make him suffer a little, the person behind him might be happier." As she said that, she raised a finger. "As long as I control the limit, I'll be fine. What do you think?" Hearing that, Bai Xiao narrowed her eyes. Heaven's Hater smiled. "You'd better stay in his Xiaota forever." After saying that, her body gradually turned illusory. Bai Xiao was silent for a moment. She shook her head with a smile and turned to leave. Inside the Xiaota, Yi Xian was still meditating. Break the circle. At that moment, he understood what a circle was. The so-called circle was actually no state. To be more precise, it was a realm. People in the world cultivated realms, but they were also bound by realms. That was because realms were equivalent to a frame that trapped people in it. In other words, cultivating Dao would eventually be bound by Dao. How to get out of this frame? Yi Xian frowned slightly at the thought of this. He understood what a circle was, but now, there was a problem. How to break this circle? Yi Xian fell into deep thought. It was easy to know the circle, but difficult to break it. Time passed bit by bit. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly frowned. Why did he have to break the circle himself? Why didn't he let Qing help him break the circle? At that thought, he took out the green profound sword. After a moment, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and the green profound sword in his hand began to tremble violently. Break the circle. Breaking the circle by oneself was one way, but getting others to help you break the circle was also another way. In other words, walking directly into the circle of others meant walking into another circle that was even stronger than the one before. In his opinion, even if he broke the circle, he would still be in someone else's circle. If that was the case, why not find a bigger circle and jump into it himself? In this world, Qing Er's circle was definitely powerful. If he could enter her circle, Even those who broke the circle would not be able to do anything to him. After all, this was Qing-Er's circle. At that thought, Yi Xian was a little excited. At that moment, he had a goal and was no longer lost. What he needed to do next was to find a way to enter Qing-Er's circle. Actually, it was not difficult because he had the green profound sword. He could borrow the green profound sword to enter Qing-Er's circle. If others broke the circle, Yi Xian would borrow the circle. This was actually a brand new way of cultivation. Of course, he might be the only one who could cultivate because he had the circle to borrow. One's thinking determines one's height. Yi Xian looked at the green profound sword in his hand. The green profound sword trembled slightly, and in the next moment, the green profound sword turned into countless sword rays. Gradually, the sword rays converged into the woman in the plain dress. At that moment, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. In his mind, the scene where Qing-Er once appeared. What was her Dao? Yi Xian did not know. Of course, he had no intention of walking on Qing-Er's Dao. What he needed to do was simple: enter Qing-Er's circle. To enter Qing-Er's circle, he must achieve two things. First, he must have a medium. He could not enter just by thinking about it. Second, Qing-Er must not oppose it. A medium? He naturally knew that it was the green profound sword. The green profound sword was personally forged by Qing. It contained her own power and Dao. Using the green profound sword as a medium was the most suitable. As for the second point, why would Qing-Er oppose him? In the middle of the field, Yi Xian's eyes were closed. In his mind, bits and pieces of Qing-Er's past appeared. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. In front of him, the Qing-Er that was formed from sword rays suddenly turned into dots of sword rays and disappeared into his forehead. When the last dot of sword rays entered Yi Xian's body, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Boom! The space-time in front of Yi Xian shattered. At this time, Xiaoda was horrified. "Young lord, don't do anything rash." Yi Xian slowly opened his right hand and lightly wiped it. The shattered space-time was restored. At this time, Xiaoda said, "Young lord, have you entered Sister Tianming's circle?" The corner of Yi Xian's mouth curled up into a smile. Gradually, the smile widened. Xiaoda suddenly said, "Young lord, your smile is so perverted." Yi Xian, circle. Ignoring Xiaoda, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He had entered Qing-Er's circle. After entering Qing-Er's circle, he suddenly realized that this circle was so big that he could not feel the end. Before this, he had also been in the circle, but compared to Qing-Er, it was like, no, there was no comparison at all. After he entered Qing-Er's circle, he felt that he was alone in the depths of the vast universe. This circle was boundless and there was no end to it. Breaking the circle? Strictly speaking, he was not breaking the circle. He had just left his small circle and entered an invincible big circle. Of course, at this moment, his strength had also changed dramatically. Not only his strength, but his sword Dao had also changed dramatically. Breaking the circle. His current sword Dao was also different from before. He defined it as entering the circle. At this moment, he realized that he was truly above the space-time Dao. Not only that, but when he looked back, he realized that the inaction realm expert was like a child. He also understood why he could not fight back in front of that heaven loathsome. They were really not on the same level. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. At this moment, the green profound sword changed again. The sword became stronger because of the person. After he transformed, the green profound sword would change as well. Now, both he and the green profound sword had changed dramatically. At this moment, Bai Xiao appeared in front of Yi Xian. There was a flash of surprise in her eyes. "You broke through?" Yi Xian nodded. Bai Xiao smiled. "Congratulations." Yi Xian looked at Bai Xiao. "Miss Bai Xiao, do you want to spar?" Bai Xiao blinked. "Are you sure?" Yi Xian smiled. "Yes." Bai Xiao nodded. "Okay." With that, the two left Xiaoda and came to an unknown mysterious spacetime. Bai Xiao looked at Yi Xian. "Make your move." Yi Xian flicked his sleeves. Pissed. A sword slashed at Bai Xiao. Bai Xiao put her fingers together and pointed forward. Boom. The sword light shattered. The next moment, Bai Xiao was sent flying thousands of feet away. Not only that, but the moment she stopped, 2 of her fingers were cut off. I've been working hard to save some manuscripts. I've saved some. Everyone, wait for me to break out. Chapter 2013. She was stunned. Bai Xiao was stunned. What's going on? In the distance, Yi Xian's expression was calm as if he'd expected this. The green profound sword had been remodeled by Qing Air. Especially the tip of the sword, it contained the mysterious energy of Qing Air. Even though Bai Xiao was formidable, it didn't mean that she could disregard the green profound sword. Bai Xiao gazed at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you and your sword shocked me. Yi Xian smiled. Why? Bai Xiao spoke in a low voice. Even though you're the one who broke the circle now, your current strength is still insufficient to harm me under normal circumstances. Because I'm the one who drew the circle. So, theoretically speaking, it's impossible for your sword to break through my laws. But not only did your sword break through my laws just now, it even injured me. As she spoke, she gazed at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. It's your sword. Yi Xian smiled. Then I won't try using my sword. What do you think? Bai Xiao nodded. All right. With a thought from Yi Xian, the Qingxian sword vanished, and he took a step forward. With this step, a ray of sword light flashed across the battlefield. In the distance, Bai Xiao stretched out her right hand and suddenly clenched it. She actually grabbed Yi Xian's sword light. However, her expression changed in the next moment. Bang! The sword light shattered, and Bai Xiao retreated by over 1 kilometer. However, she hadn't even stopped when Yi Xian suddenly pressed his fingers together and slashed diagonally towards Bai Xiao from afar. A strand of sword light slashed down from above Bai Xiao's head. It was so swift that it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Bai Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly. She opened her palm and pressed it down lightly. In an instant, a mysterious barrier appeared around her. Bang! The space around Bai Xiao trembled slightly, and the strand of sword light vanished without a trace. However, Bai Xiao was completely fine. But right at this moment, strand after strand of sword light slashed down towards her like a storm. Sword energy like rain. Boom, 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 boom. Rays of sword light shattered ceaselessly, and Bai Xiao retreated again and again. When the last ray of sword light shattered and was obliterated, Bai Xiao had already retreated an entire 30 kilometers away. As soon as she stopped, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward, and in the next moment, a sword slashed directly in front of Bai Xiao. Boom! Bai Xiao instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet, but Yi Xian was still unable to break her barrier. Yi Xian didn't attack again because he had already used all his strength in that strike. In the distance, Bai Xiao looked at Yi Xian with a trace of seriousness in the depths of her eyes. At this moment, she was extremely shocked. Even though Yi Xian wasn't able to break her barrier, Yi Xian was able to force her back a few 100,000 feet. Logically speaking, this was absolutely impossible. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Bai Xiao, what defense is this? Bai Xiao looked at Yi Xian. It's my own Dao technique barrier, an exclusive special ability of the person who draws circles. This isn't something that can be broken by someone who draws circles because the Dao technique contained within it has far surpassed the space-time Dao. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Can I try using the green profound sword? Bai Xiao thought for a moment and nodded. Sure. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. In the next moment, the sword vanished. A sword suddenly slashed down in front of Bai Xiao. Boom! Space-time suddenly caved in front of Bai Xiao, and then a mysterious force suddenly shattered. Boom! Bai Xiao was directly forced back 30 kilometers. It was broken. In the distance, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He looked at the distant Bai Xiao, and her expression was extremely solemn. With this sword, you can already fight against the person who breaks the circle. At this moment, her heart was like a raging sea. Terrifying. That was how she felt at this moment. Even in the universe origin world, the most monstrous genius couldn't fight against the person who draws circles by breaking circles. But Yi Xian could. Of course, he had to include the sword in Yi Xian's hand. However, even without the sword, Yi Xian could actually fight against the person who draws circles, but he could only barely do so. But with the green profound sword, it would be completely different. With the green profound sword, Yi Xian had a chance to kill the person who breaks the circle. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Bai Xiao, Heaven Vexation is a person who draws circles. Is she stronger than you?" Bai Xiao nodded. "Much stronger than me." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "Can you tell me in detail?" Bai Xiao smiled and said, "Be it breaking circles or drawing circles, they are divided into the inner circle and the outer circle. Heaven Vexation and I are both people who draw circles, but she is in the inner circle and I am in the outer circle. Apart from that, every person who draws circles has a different Dao. For example, some people who draw circles are swordsmen, and swordsmen's combat power is naturally stronger. In any case, there are many factors that determine a person's combat power." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." With that said, he paused slightly and asked again, "Can I fight against Heaven Vexation now?" Bai Xiao hesitated and shook her head. "It's difficult." Yi Xian smiled. "It's all right. Take your time." Bai Xiao looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, do you want to go to the universe origin world?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "The universe origin world?" Bai Xiao nodded. "It's a big stage, suitable for a super monster like you." Yi Xian smiled. "If I bring you to the universe origin world, will Heaven Vexation stop us?" Bai Xiao smirked. "Definitely." Yi Xian smiled. "If we join forces, can we fight against her?" Bai Xiao still shook her head. "No. That's because she's not the only person from the Heaven Forsaken clan. She's undoubtedly the strongest in the Heaven Forsaken clan, but the others aren't weak either, especially the Heaven Forsaken battle god. His combat power is terrifying." Yi Xian was a little curious. "The Heaven Forsaken battle god?" Bai Xiao nodded. "A very powerful person. Back then, this person fought against 6 powerhouses from the Heaven Forsaken clan alone and didn't lose." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Can he beat my sister?" Bai Xiao's expression froze. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. "Young Master Yi, your question? Heaven Vexation doesn't even have the strength to fight back in front of your sister. Isn't this Heaven Forsaken battle god just sending himself to death in front of your sister?" Yi Xian, Bai Xiao smiled. "Young Master Yi, are you interested in going to the universe origin world?" Yi Xian said, "Do you have a way to deal with that woman?" Bai Xiao looked at Yi Xian. "If young Master Yi wants to go, I'll think of a way to deal with that woman." Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "Miss Bai Xiao, you're the one who wants to return to the universe origin world, right?" Bai Xiao blinked. "Of course, it's on the way." Yi Xian laughed. "Miss Bai Xiao, you're really interesting. I've received benefits from you before. I feel that I shouldn't accept undeserved rewards. If Miss Bai Xiao needs my help, I'm willing to help. This woman was really bad. She was the one who wanted to go back." Bai Xiao smiled. "Then, young Master Yi, please send me off." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." With that, the two left Xiao. Bai Xiao looked up. She flicked her sleeves and a space-time tunnel appeared in the sky. Bai Xiao pointed at the space-time tunnel. "I can leave once I enter it." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Then why don't you open the space-time tunnel in front of you? Why do you have to go so far?" Bai Xiao roared with laughter. "Young Master Yi, what you're paying attention to is really interesting. Let me tell you, it's useless no matter where I open it because that woman will forcefully enter and stop me. I can only leave safely if someone stops her." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "I can only stop one circle drawing expert." Bai Xiao nodded. "That's enough." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly shot into the sky. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared before the space-time tunnel. It was Heaven Hateful. Heaven Hateful gazed at Bai Xiao. "You want to go back?" Bai Xiao smiled. As she spoke, she gazed at Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly gazed at Heaven Hateful. Let's fight again. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure shook and vanished on the spot. A strand of sword light suddenly shot explosively into the sky. In the sky, Heaven Hateful's eyes narrowed slightly as she suddenly clamped down with the fingers of her right hand. Bang! The strand of sword light was instantly clamped down. But in the next moment, her pupils constricted, and she hurriedly let go of it and moved over 10 kilometers back. When she stopped moving, blood was slowly seeping out from between her fingers. Heaven Hateful's eyes narrowed slightly when she witnessed this scene, and then she looked up at Yi Xian. Break the circle. Yi Xian didn't waste his breath. The green sword in his hand suddenly vanished on the spot. Heaven Hateful smashed her fist forward. Bang! The green sword was obstructed. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when Heaven Hateful suddenly stretched out her right hand and grabbed the hilt of the green sword. In an instant, she'd appeared in front of Yi Xian, and then she swung her sword down. It was extremely swift. However, Yi Xian actually didn't dodge at all, and he just allowed it to strike his head. Heaven Hateful's eyes narrowed slightly when the green sword came into contact with Yi Xian's head, and she was about to retreat. Because she had a bad feeling. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward, and his right leg kicked towards Heaven Hateful's stomach. At practically the exact same moment, Heaven Hateful abandoned the green sword and swung her right fist forward. Bang! Bang! With two muffled sounds, Heaven Hater and Yi Xian were sent flying at the same time. Yi Xian was sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away, while Heaven Hater was sent flying less than 3,000 feet back. Yi Xian's body had vanished when he stopped moving. That punch from before had shattered his body. Moreover, his knee hadn't been able to shatter Heaven Hateful's body. On the other side, Bai Xiao had stopped moving as well. A man with white hair stood before her, and he had his hands behind his back. An expert who drew circles. Both of them hadn't attacked. At this moment, there were over 10 extremely powerful auras around Bai Xiao, and 9 of them were the auras of the people who drew circles. Yi Xian had sensed this as well. Needless to say, he was shocked. There were actually over 10 experts who drew circles here. This heaven-abandoned race was truly extraordinary. Most importantly, Heaven Hateful had suffered a great loss when he'd chosen to go head-on against Heaven Hateful. Heaven Hateful was stronger than him, so he would only suffer if he went head-on against Heaven Hateful. Heaven Hateful glanced coldly at Yi Xian. You've surprised me quite a bit. I never expected that you would be able to break through the circle in such a short period of time. Moreover, your combat strength is so formidable. As she spoke, she turned to look at Bai Xiao. Foolish woman, do you think you can survive by relying on King Reliance? Even he has to rely on others, so how can you rely on him? Bai Xiao glanced at Heaven Hateful. The word between your brows is really pretty. Yi Xian was speechless. This woman. She intends to hold on to that for the rest of her life. Chapter 2014. Heaven Loathsome's face sank when she heard Bai Xiao's words. She glanced at the white-haired man in the distance. Stop, King Kaoshan. When she spoke up to hear, she paused for a moment and said, Don't kill him. Then she turned and walked towards Bai Xiao. Woman, I'll tear your mouth apart later. Bai Xiao smiled. Bring it on. As soon as she finished speaking, her body suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, a tree actually appeared within her body. Heaven Loathsome narrowed her eyes. Divine Wilderness Ancient Tree. Bai Xiao smiled. Why would I be here if I didn't have some ability? Heaven Loathsome, I'll wait for you in Eternity Dimension. She looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, until we meet again. Then she turned and walked towards the space-time tunnel. Heaven Loathsome didn't stop her. Yi Xian glanced at Heaven Loathsome. He was curious. Why didn't this woman stop Bai Xiao? Was it because of the Divine Wilderness Ancient Tree? Bai Xiao vanished from the space-time tunnel completely. Heaven Loathsome turned to look at Yi Xian. She just stared at Yi Xian. Yi Xian turned and left. The white-haired man stood in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly turned and walked to Heaven Loathsome. He opened his arms. Come kill me. Heaven Loathsome glared at Yixian. Yixian approached Heaven Loathsome and said seriously, I'm begging for death. The white-haired man clenched his right fist and punched at Yixian. He had just come out of seclusion, so he didn't know what had happened. The white-haired man punched, but Yixian didn't dodge. If the punch landed, his soul would be destroyed. Just as the white-haired man's punch was about to land on Yixian's head, Heaven Loathsome flicked her sleeve. Boom! The white-haired man was sent flying thousands of feet away. The white-haired man looked at Heaven Loathsome in confusion. Heaven Loathsome didn't explain. She looked at Yixian and gave him a thumbs up. You have guts. With that, she turned around and left. Yixian shrugged and turned to leave. After Yixian left, the white-haired man approached Heaven Loathsome and bowed slightly. Ancient Flamen, why didn't you kill him? Tian Yen was expressionless. If I kill him, my heaven-forsaken tribe will be gone. The white-haired man was stunned. How could that be? Heaven Loathsome turned to look at the white-haired man. Tian Ke, don't touch him. With that, she turned around and disappeared into the distance. Tian Ke fell silent. After returning to Dao Ling Palace, Yixian went straight to Xiao Ta. Yixian's expression was a little ugly. His body was gone. In the previous battle with Heaven Loathsome, he had been completely crushed in terms of battle awareness and power. The other party was willing to injure him in exchange for his life. It had to be said that there was still quite a gap between him and this heaven hatred. Unless he used the power of his bloodline and the Qingxian sword, he might not be able to truly fight it. However, this time's failure was also a great harvest. Every time he fought, he would gain something. Because every time he failed, he would be able to find out what he was lacking. Yixian began to repair his body. A day later, Yixian's body was repaired. He left Xiao Ta. As soon as he left Xiao Ta, Dao Ling appeared before him. Dao Ling's expression was extremely solemn. Something big is happening in the heavenly tomb. Yixian frowned slightly. Something big? Dao Ling nodded and pointed to the ground. Feel it. Yixian looked down at the ground. A moment later, he frowned again. He realized that the ground was shaking. Not just the ground, but the surrounding space was also trembling slightly. Dao Ling said in a low voice, I suspect that woman wants to destroy this alternate world. After a moment of silence, Yixian said, I'll go take a look. With that, he went straight to the heavenly tomb. At that moment, the entire heaven-forsaken clan was gathered in front of the sacrificial altar. Heaven Hatred stood on the sacrificial altar, her hands forming a strange hand seal as she muttered something. Yixian's arrival also attracted the attention of the heaven-forsaken clan's experts. When they saw Yixian, the heaven-forsaken clan's experts all had complicated expressions. King Kaoshan was here again. They naturally wanted nothing more than to eat Yixian's flesh and drink his blood. However, they did not dare to attack Yixian. The woman in the plain dress was the nightmare of the heaven-forsaken clan. On that day, as long as Yixian nodded, the sword would fall, and the once glorious and invincible heaven-forsaken clan would completely disappear. At that moment, Heaven Hatred opened her eyes on the sacrificial altar. She looked at Yixian without saying anything. Yixian stared at Heaven Hatred. What do you want? Heaven Hatred was expressionless. What does it have to do with you? Yixian smiled. If you want to destroy this banished lands, then I have to remind you that this place is related to Qing. If you destroy this place, I cannot guarantee that she will not appear. Heaven Hatred stared fixedly at Yixian. Do you only know how to use her to threaten me? Yixian thought for a moment and said, Then can you give me some face and not destroy this place? Heaven Hatred looked at Yixian. Do you think that you have enough face? Yixian shrugged. Then destroy it. Once you are destroyed, Qing will definitely appear. Do you want to take a gamble? Use the lives of your entire clan to do so. If she appears, then I will definitely nod this time. Nod. Heaven Hatred's expression suddenly turned ugly. It should be said that it was slightly ferocious. At that time, the woman in a plain dress had asked Yixian if he wanted to destroy the Forsaken clan. If he had nodded, then the Forsaken clan would have vanished from this world. To the Forsaken clan, this was simply an extraordinary humiliation. Heaven Hatred stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and the killing intent in his eyes wasn't concealed at all. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Heaven Hatred, are you trying to kill me? Heaven Hatred ridiculed. How could I dare? King Kaoshan. Yi Xian glanced at the members of the Forsaken clan. They were all looking at Yi Xian with undisguised killing intent in their eyes. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed when he saw this. At this moment, he suddenly realized that not interfering in the Forsaken clan's affairs seemed to be a mistake. Suddenly, a woman from the Forsaken clan walked forward. She looked 60 to 70% similar to Heaven Hatred. She walked over to Yi Xian and grinned. Young Master Yi, the Forsaken clan will not destroy this abandoned land. Yi Xian looked at the woman. You are. The woman smiled. Heaven Hatred is my older sister. I'm Fekta. As she spoke, she walked over to Heaven Hatred's side, took his hand, and said, Young Master Yi, there was no enmity between us. The reason it has come to this is actually a misunderstanding. Now that the misunderstanding has been resolved, we shouldn't continue being enemies. Young Master Yi doesn't want this world to vanish, and the Forsaken clan is willing to give Young Master Yi face. We will absolutely not destroy this world, nor will we be hostile towards Young Master Yi. Young Master Yi can rest assured about this. Yi Xian smiled. You seem to be different from your sister. Fekta grinned. My sister is more impatient. Yi Xian glanced at the silent Heaven Hatred, then turned and left. No one stopped Yi Xian. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared into the horizon. After Yi Xian left, everyone looked at Fekta. Some of the Forsaken clan members were displeased. They were very unhappy that Fekta had shown weakness to Yi Xian just now. Fekta said softly, up until now he hasn't wanted to get involved in the matters between us and the Divine Wilderness race, while we, the Forsaken clan, are constantly hostile towards him. I would like to ask my clansmen, if he really joins forces with the Divine Wilderness race to deal with us, what should we do? As she said this, she suddenly roared, What should we do? This roar was completely different from its previous gentleness. What should we do? This roar was like a thunderclap. Fekta looked coldly at the Forsaken clan experts around her. Look at him. Your eyes are filled with killing intent. Let me ask you, he is lying here. Do you dare to kill him? Do you? Everyone was silent. Fekta continued, up until now, we are not willing to admit a fact. Or rather, we are all avoiding this fact. What is the truth? That is, the Forsaken clan is no match for her. Our entire Forsaken clan is nothing more than a sword strike in front of the plain-dressed woman. If that's the case, what right do we have to be enemies with Yi Xian? Everyone's expressions turned ugly, including Heaven Hatred's. Fekta shook her head slightly. We can't beat the plain-dressed woman, but we are constantly making enemies with Yi Xian. I really don't understand why we are doing this. Is it because of our Forsaken clan's arrogance? But does our Forsaken clan have the right to be arrogant in front of the plain-dressed woman? The strongest person in the history of the Universe Yuan world is just a circle-drawing person. What about the plain-dressed woman? Her strength is at least above that circle-drawing person. As she said this, she looked at the crowd again. Forgive me for speaking bluntly, but our Forsaken clan is like an ant in front of that woman. If she hadn't wanted to train Yi Xian, our Forsaken clan would have been destroyed. There was a deathly silence. At this moment, Fekta looked at Heaven Hatred. Sister, I know you can't accept this and you dislike Yi Xian even more. However, you have to understand that we really can't offend him. Once he joins the Divine Wilderness race, we will be in a very passive position. Don't provoke this fellow again. Heaven Hatred slowly closed her eyes. Actually, how could she not know what Fekta had said? However, she really disliked Yi Xian. An ant had provoked her time and again. What right did he have to provoke her? What right did he have to provoke her? The plain-dressed woman. Heaven Hatred suddenly opened her eyes. Fekta, you are right. As she spoke, she looked at the space-time tunnel in the sky. She opened her palm, and behind her, the altar suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, The altar suddenly erupted with an extremely terrifying black pillar of light that shot into the sky. This black pillar of light directly entered the space-time tunnel. Heaven Hatred's eyes flashed with hostility. "Let's go." As soon as she said this, she turned into a stream of light and entered the space-time tunnel through the black pillar of light. Behind her were countless Forsaken clan experts. The entire clan had left. As for the altar, it was continuously absorbing the spirit energy of the entire heavenly tomb. However, it did not absorb the spirit energy outside the heavenly tomb, because if it absorbed the spirit energy from the heavenly tomb, the entire world would be gone. Soon, all the Forsaken clan experts had disappeared. The alternate world returned to peace. In Dao Ling Palace, Yi Xian looked in the direction of the heavenly tomb. He knew that a huge battle was about to begin. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the woman. The person who had come was Yi Ling. When he saw Yi Ling, Yi Xian was completely dumbfounded. This was because Yi Ling was only left with a spirit body. What had happened? It's too difficult to save a manuscript. Chapter 2015. The moment he saw Yi Ling, Yi Xian's expression changed. Yi Ling's soul was all that was left. After all, Yi Ling was Sister Nian's follower. Did something happen to Sister Nian? At this moment, Yi Ling said in a trembling voice, "Brother, something happened." Something happened? Hearing this, Yi Xian's heart sank, and he quickly said, "Don't panic, tell me slowly." But Yi Ling grabbed Yi Xian's hand. "Go save Sister N and Sister Wenxiu." After saying this, she turned around and left with Yi Xian. Yi Xian quickly opened his palm, and the green profound sword entered Yi Ling's body and began to nourish Yi Ling's soul. On the way, Yi Xian said, "What happened? Where's Sister Nian? Don't tell me something happened to Sister Nian." In his heart, as long as Qing Er and the others did not make a move, Sister Nian was invincible. Yi Ling wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian did not frown. "What happened?" Yi Ling said softly, "Sister Nian disappeared." Yi Xian said, "What do you mean?" Yi Ling shook her head. "I don't know either. After Sister Nian brought us to the universe realm, she discovered something and said she was going out. But she never returned." Universe realm. Yi Xian frowned again. He did not expect Sister Nian and the others to go to the universe realm. Yi Ling continued, "After Sister Nian left, we searched everywhere for her. Then we met the Ancient Star Clan. The Ancient Star Clan's young clan leader wanted to pursue Sister N, but she rejected him. So he kept looking for trouble with us." Hearing this, Yi Xian's face instantly turned gloomy. At this time, Yi Ling said, "During a conflict, Sister N and Sister Wenxiu stopped them and let me go first." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian and said, "They outnumber us, and Sister Nian isn't here. We're no match for them." "Are Wenxiu and Xiaoan all right?" Yi Xian asked. Yi Ling shook his head. "I don't know." As she spoke, she hurriedly said, "We have to hurry over." Yi Xian suddenly passed the green profound sword to Yi Ling. "Recall the universe origin realm in your mind." Yi Ling was a little confused, but he still did as he was told. The green profound sword in Yi Ling's hand started to vibrate. Moments later, Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword returned to his hand. He looked at Yi Ling and said, "Report to Xiao Ta." As soon as he finished speaking, he directly stored Yi Ling into Xiao Ta's body. Yi Xian held the green profound sword and slowly closed his eyes. The next moment, the space-time in front of him suddenly tore apart. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian had already transformed into a sword beam and disappeared. His target was the universe origin realm. Yi Xian used the green profound sword to tear apart space-time. Fortunately, he was strong now. Otherwise, he would not have been able to withstand such a tearing, because it was too far. Along the way, Yi Xian's face was terrifyingly gloomy and his eyes were suffused with a faint blood-red color. Universe Origin Realm. The current Universe Origin Realm was unusually united because of the appearance of the Heaven-Forsaken race. The major forces of the universe origin realm naturally would not forget the heaven-forsaken race. Back then, almost all the forces of the universe origin realm had joined forces to chase this terrifying race out of the universe origin realm. They were chased out, not exterminated. Back then, even if all the races joined forces, they could not destroy the heaven-forsaken race. In the universe origin realm, there were 6 super races. They were the divine wilderness race, the Li race, the heavenly abyss race, the Meng race, the ancient star race, and the Shi race. Although there were many races in the universe origin realm, these 6 races were the strongest and also the leaders. Now, with the appearance of the heaven-forsaken race, the leaders of the 6 races, who had been fighting amongst themselves, had once again gathered together and signed an alliance. Under the leadership of the 6 races, the other races also grouped together and followed suit. The current universe origin realm was as united as it had been in the past. In an unknown mountain range. Bang! With a muffled sound, a woman frantically retreated. As she retreated, the space-time behind her directly shattered and was annihilated. The woman was Xianxia. Beside Xianxia was Zhang Wenxiu. Opposite the 2 women stood 3 men and a woman. The man in the lead was the young clan leader of the ancient star race, Gu Nan. The 2 men beside him were the young clan leader of the divine wilderness race, Xin Qing, and the young clan leader of the Shi race, Shi Tian. The woman was the young mistress of the Li clan, Li Su. Behind the 4 of them, there were 16 super experts. Of these 16 people, 15 were circle breakers. The black-robed old man leading them was the circle drawer. He was the one who had repelled Xianxia. At this moment, Gunan looked at Xianxia and smiled. "Missin, you are the first woman to reject me. But the more you reject me, the more interested I am in you. Do you know why? Because I like the feeling of conquest." On the side, the divine wilderness race's Xinqing smiled. "Brother Gunan, I have to say that you have good taste. This woman is indeed interesting." However, this woman was able to resist the circle drawer with the strength of a circle breaker. "I think her identity is not simple." The circle drawing old man also said, "Young clan leader, this woman is indeed extraordinary. If you forcefully capture her, I'm afraid you will provoke some trouble." Gunan smiled. "In the universe origin realm, there is no one that our 6 great clans cannot afford to offend. But outside the universe origin realm," as he said this, the corners of his mouth curled up. Outside the universe origin realm, the forces of the lower worlds are not even comparable to ants in front of our 6 great clans. Arrogant? No one felt that Gunan was arrogant. The universe origin realm was currently known as the center of the universe. In this place, the martial art civilization was currently the highest known. Outside the universe origin realm, the other worlds were equivalent to barbarians in the eyes of the 6 great clans. Gunan looked at Xianxia again and said with a smile, "If you were to marry me with your talent and the resources of my Gu family, it would not be impossible for you to become a circle breaker." In the distance, Xianxia ignored Gunan. She looked at the circle-breaking old man and said, "Again." As her voice faded, she suddenly vanished on the spot. A spear pierced towards the old man like a bolt of lightning. The old man frowned and raised his arm to block it. Boom! With a muffled sound, the old man retreated nearly 100 feet. Gunan and the others furrowed their brows when they saw this. They were also circle breakers, but they absolutely could not take 3 moves from the old man. However, Xianxia was actually able to force the old man back. This was truly heaven-defying. The old man glanced at Xianxia, and there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. "She's a monster indeed." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward and punched at Xianxia. In the distance, Xianxia's expression was calm as she stabbed her spear forward, and a cold light appeared on the tip of her spear. Countless forces converged at this point. Rumble! Along with an explosion, an expanse of spear light erupted like a volcano. Xianxia and the old man retreated repeatedly at the same time, and Xianxia retreated into a space-time abyss. On the other hand, the old man retreated by almost 3 kilometers. The faces of Gu Nan and the others sank when they saw this scene, and their expressions grew even more serious. The old man stared fixedly at Xianxia while a trace of seriousness flickered in the depths of his eyes. Too monstrous. That was what he felt at this moment. If this woman became a circle breaker, then there would probably be no one in the same realm of cultivation who could be a match for her. Moreover, even the most monstrous circle breaker in the universe origin realm was probably inferior to this woman. In the distance, Xianxia slowly closed her eyes while the spear in her hand trembled violently. Meanwhile, Gu Nan suddenly said, "Third uncle, can you capture her?" The old man glanced at Gu Nan and spoke in a low voice. "This woman isn't simple. You might not be able to subdue her." Gu Nan roared with laughter. "Third uncle, are you joking? She's just a woman. Do you think I can't subdue her?" The old man frowned. "Isn't this nephew of mine a little too conceited?" Gu Nan continued, "Third uncle, remember not to kill her. I'll definitely make her mine." As he spoke, his eyes flickered with a trace of excitement as he gazed at Xianxia. "Only subduing such a woman would give me a sense of accomplishment." The old man glanced at Gu Nan, and then he turned to look at Xianxia. "Come. Let me see how monstrous you are." As soon as he finished speaking, he was just about to attack when Xianxia suddenly vanished on the spot. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he charged forward and tapped his finger forward. A head-on collision. Spear arrived. Bang. Xianxia's spear was stopped by this finger. But in the next moment, Xianxia let go of the spear in her right hand, and then she seized the opportunity to charge forward and strike her knee towards the old man's stomach. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he swiftly pressed his left hand down. Bang. Along with a muffled bang, the old man was blasted back repeatedly. Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly grabbed the spear with her right hand, and then her figure leaped up and stabbed her spear towards the old man's head. This space was torn apart. The old man swiftly raised his head, and then he suddenly twisted his right hand. In an instant, the space in front of him had transformed into a pitch-black vortex. When Xianxia's spear stabbed into the black vortex, a strand of terrifying force suddenly erupted from within it, and Xianxia's spear was instantly swallowed by the black vortex. Xianxia's pupils constricted slightly. Her figure shook as she flashed backwards, and she retreated 3 kilometers away. However, she just stopped when an afterimage suddenly appeared behind her. Xianxia's expression changed drastically, and she swiftly turned around and raised her arms horizontally. Bang! Xianxia was blasted over 10 kilometers away by a powerful force, and her body was blasted into pieces as soon as she stopped moving. Moreover, a middle-aged man was standing not too far away from her. 2 circle drawers. Zhang Wenxiu hurriedly appeared by Xianxia's side, and she spoke in a low voice. "Are you all right?" At this moment, Xianxia's soul was slightly ethereal, and it was very weak. She could still deal with 1 circle-drawing person, but she couldn't do anything to 2 of them. Meanwhile, Gu Nan suddenly smiled and said, "Missin, why act like this?" Xianxia directly disregarded Gu Nan, and she gazed at the middle-aged man while she slowly clenched her right fist. Gu Nan's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Xianxia disregard him again. "You like to act cold and aloof, right? Wait for what?" Right at this moment, a ferocious voice suddenly resounded. The expressions of the old man and middle-aged man instantly changed drastically, and then they swiftly gazed at Gu Nan. Meanwhile, a young man had suddenly appeared in front of Gu Nan, and Gu Nan hadn't even reacted when a sword was pressed against the center of his forehead. It was exactly Yi Xian. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Yi Xian instantly restrain Gu Nan. "Don't touch him." Gu Nan gazed at Yi Xian and said, "Who are you?" Yi Xian grinned and revealed an extremely ferocious smile. "You set your sights on my woman and even destroyed my younger sister's body. Did Tian Yi give you the gall?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stabbed his sword into Gu Nan's crotch. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.